Chapter 3241. That's him, Ling Xiao said. Although he didn't recognize Mammoth Mountain, he recognized Dragon Mammoth. Now that Dragon Mammoth was being held hostage, there was no need to ask who he was. Ling Xiao was just about to make a move when he sensed a powerful aura from the Imperial Palace. Dugubajian had appeared. Ling Xiao frowned, then reined in his aura and waited for the right moment to strike. Most likely, Dugubajian was a 5th Division life-sizer, and Mammoth Mountain was also in the 5th Division. If Ling Xiao were to charge out now, he would be caught in a pincer attack from both of them. That wouldn't be worth it. Since Dragon Mammoth wasn't in any immediate danger, Yang Qi decided to observe the situation. If things went south, then he would make his move. So you're Emperor Dugubajian of the Sword Dynasty? Mammoth Mountain said, looking down at Dugubajian with complete disdain. Dugubajian hovered there in midair, his face cold and emotionless. His eyes were filled with cunning and intelligence. He had ruled the Sword Dynasty for hundreds of years, and no one had ever succeeded in wresting control from him. Whether it was in terms of strength or scheming, he was terrifying. "Who are you, sire?" Dugubajian asked coolly. "You don't need to know," Mammoth Mountain said coolly. "Just give up your position and submit to me." Mammoth Mountain's arrogance was beyond imagination. The experts in Sword God City were all discussing the situation, and were convinced that this man was even more arrogant than Ling Xiao had been in the past. He actually dared to make Dugubajian hand over the position of emperor? "You must be joking, sire," Mammoth Mountain said. "The Sword Dynasty has existed for 10,000 years. There's a reason why it exists. Not even Dragon Mother of the Myriad Kingdoms would dare to force me to abdicate. You're far too arrogant." Dugubajian looked disdainfully at Mammoth Mountain. Truth be told, he could tell that Mammoth Mountain was from the Dracomamoth clan. Bullshit like that might work on a kid, but it won't work on me, Mammoth Mountain. Mammoth Mountain laughed heartily. For generations, the Myriad Kingdoms had told their descendants that the Sword Dynasty was weak enough to be bullied and humiliated. But that didn't mean they shouldn't try to take it for themselves, unless there was a change in their own ranks. However, Xiangshan did not believe such a warning at all. He felt that those old fellows were too stubborn and useless. "I still have to believe the words of the elderly," Dugubajian said indifferently. "We will definitely not give the throne to you. However, if you want something else, we might be able to give it to you on account of the Myriad Kingdom Dragon Mother." Even if he knelt down and begged for mercy now, he wasn't afraid of being laughed at, because the people of Sword Dynasty knew how terrifying the other 8 great powers were. Their emperor was nothing in the eyes of others. If the other party only wanted something, he wouldn't mind giving it to the other party. After all, it was better to make a friend than to have more enemies. After all, the immemorial divine tomb was about to open soon, and he had to focus on that. "I want everything else, but I need the throne even more." Xiangshan did not back down. Xiangshan was really overbearing. He thought that he could disregard the martial artists of Sword Dynasty just because he came from one country. Even if he asked Dugubajian to kneel, Dugubajian would probably agree. However, giving up the throne was out of the question. That was Dugubajian's bottom line. "So you're saying you're going to take it by force?" Dugubajian said, his eyes flickering with terrifying killing intent. After all, Ling Xiao and Jian Fulong had caused a huge ruckus in Sword God City. Dugubajian's reputation had been severely damaged. That day he had been on the verge of a breakthrough and hadn't wanted to interrupt his cultivation. But now that he had, and Xiangshan didn't know what was good for him, he had no choice but to play along. "So what if I take it by force? I'd advise you not to refuse a toast, only to be forced to drink a forfeit. If you give up the throne, I'll let you serve me, and you'll still be rich and powerful. But if you insist on making an enemy of me, then don't blame me for being vicious and merciless." Xiangshan chuckled coldly. "Vicious and merciless? Go ahead and try. You're just a 5th Division life-sizer. Do you really think you can cause trouble in Sword Dynasty? If Xiangshan had been a 6th Division life-sizer, Dugabajian wouldn't have dared to fight him head-on. But he was only a 5th Division life-sizer. What did he have to fear? Dugabajian's dragon robes fluttered, even though there was no wind. His bloodthirsty demon sword glowed with blood-red light. A terrifying killing intent filled the air. Good. Very good. I never would have guessed that the Emperor of Sword Dynasty would be such a tough nut to crack. How dare you challenge the might of the sacred dynasty of all kingdoms? Since that's the case, I guess I'll just have to kill you and take your throne. Maybe you want to take the God-Devil medallion and head to the primeval god Necropolis. But let me tell you, you have no chance. Those 3 medallions are only for those who are loyal to me. Xiangshan casually tossed the Dracomoth out of the way. Someone jumped out of the crowd and caught it. Ling Xiao saw what was happening and realized that the person who caught the Dracomoth was an expert on the same level as Qin Dedeo. He was also a 5th Division life-sizer, although he was only in the early 5th Division. Someone like that could be easily killed by Xiao Jin, and yet Ling Xiao didn't make a move. He wanted to wait for the 2 of them to begin fighting and then make his move. Finally, Dugabajian made the first move. He waved his bloodthirsty demon sword, sending out a terrifying beam of sword energy. It was none other than the monarch hegemon sword. The sword chi filled the air, but Dugabajian did not stop there. At the same time, he also pounced out, moving side by side with the sword chi towards Xiangshan. Do it, Xiao Jin! Ling Xiao knew that his chance had come, so he summoned Xiao Jin. In that moment, no one realized what the dazzling golden light represented. Mammoth Mountain didn't know. Only now did he realize that Dugabajian wasn't someone to be trifled with. Therefore, he had no choice but to throw himself into the fight. Boss, he's back! Xiao Jin said, flying back with Dracomoth in hand. Ling Xiao placed him in his spirit ring, but didn't leave. Mammoth Mountain versus Dugabajian. This was a rare fight between 2 experts, and both were his enemies. Therefore, he wanted to see how strong they were. Mammoth Mountain easily dodged Dugabajian's attack. Following that, the battle between the 2 quickly entered a stalemate. Up in the air, 2 figures, one yellow and one blue, could be seen flickering. Cultivators under the life-seizing level didn't have enough eyesight to see what was going on, and yet Ling Xiao could easily see them. Of course, he had to admit that even if he used his heaven-dominating martial soul, he still wouldn't be a match for them, unless he made a breakthrough. But that was exactly the kind of opponent he liked. They couldn't kill him easily, but he could always make breakthroughs as he fought them. I really can't wait to give this a try. Ling Xiao didn't feel the slightest bit of fear in the face of such powerful opponents. In fact, he was excited. Chapter 3242. Do you understand now, Mammoth Mountain? Considering how strong you are, there's no way you can surpass the Sword Dynasty. If we keep fighting, we'll both end up injured, and neither of us will have the upper hand. But this is my Sword Dynasty, and you'll end up worse off than me. The more Dugobatian fought, the fiercer he got. After all, he was much older than Mammoth Mountain, and was a wily old fox. The longer this went on, the worse off Mammoth Mountain would be. Of course, Dugobatian knew that if he wanted to defeat Mammoth Mountain, he would have to be seriously injured. He didn't want Ling Xiao and the others to take advantage of the situation. So what do you want? Mammoth Mountain asked, frowning. He had assumed that the strongest person in the Sword Dynasty was only in the 4th Division of life-seizing. But now he realized that Dugobatian was in the 5th Division of life-seizing. Furthermore, his fighting prowess was no weaker than Mammoth Mountain's. I've said it before. Whatever you want, we can discuss. Other than the throne, anything else is fine. Dugobatian said, Can I have the God-Devil medallion? Mammoth Mountain asked. Of course, Dugobatian replied. The Sword Dynasty has 3 God-Devil medallions. 1 for me, 1 for you, and 1 for my daughter-in-law. Look, Mammoth Mountain. Boss, Little Gold said, it looks like those 2 bastards are going to join forces. Don't worry. An alliance like that is built for the sake of profit. It'll only take a moment for it to fall apart. Besides, so what if they join forces? With you and me here, they can't do anything. Besides, they're focused on the God-Devil medallion and won't be interested in attacking the Dragon Mammoth tribe. Ling Xiao shook his head, his eyes still fixed on the two figures. Apparently, Mammoth Mountain was convinced by Dugubatian's words. Fine, he said. Give me the God-Devil medallion and help me get a martial soul transplant. Then I'll leave. That won't do. I don't have the God-Devil medallion, Dugubatian explained. The God-Devil emissaries haven't given it out yet. Instead, they're planning to hold a competition in the Sword Dynasty. Whoever is strong enough will take the medallion. Dugubatian. After all this time, you were King lying to me? Xiang Shan was completely infuriated. He felt that he had been fooled by Dugubatian and was instantly enraged. Dragon Elephant transformation. Dragon Elephant, Divine Fist. With a thunderous roar, Xiang Shan transformed into his draconic elephant battle form. His body abruptly enlarged as he blasted out a punch. It was as though an ancient draconic elephant had collided with each other. The might of his punch was extremely shocking. The terrifying fist print had already covered half of the sky. Bloodthirsty swordsmanship. Kill! The bloodthirsty swordsmanship, a medium general realm martial art, was a unique skill that Dugubatian had spent hundreds of years on. Together with the bloodthirsty demonic sword, its power was even comparable to a high-level general-level martial technique. When he executed it, half of the sky turned blood red. A huge blood sword pierced towards Elephant Mountain. A roar exploded in the sky. The buildings in Sword God City continued to collapse. This terrifying attack really seemed like the end of the world. Countless civilians began to flee the city. This Dugubatian doesn't care about the civilians at all. I can't believe he's starting a fight in Sword God City. He really isn't fit to be an emperor. Ling Xiao frowned as he followed the fleeing crowd. After all, he could clearly see what was going on from the outside. He had to admit that Dugubatian was far stronger than that piece of trash Dugushinjian. Dugushinjian had a sage body, but no heart of a powerful expert. It was truly lamentable. Dugubatian was different. After all, he had only just broken through to the 5th division of life seizing, and yet he was able to go toe-to-toe with Elephant Mountain, who was at the peak of the 5th division. That alone was worthy of admiration. Unfortunately, Dugubatian was an enemy. Otherwise, Ling Xiao would have liked to be friends with him. The clash between the two didn't result in a clear victor. Both of them were injured, but not seriously. I'm warning you one last time. Get the hell out of Sword God City. Otherwise, I won't show any mercy. Dugubatian said, clearly starting to get impatient. You're just the emperor of a puny little sword dynasty. What can you possibly do to me? If we keep fighting, you won't have as much true energy left as I do. You'll be the one to lose. Of course, Elephant Mountain wasn't going to back down. He had come from all the kingdoms for the God-Devil medallion and the throne of the Sword Dynasty. Dragon Mother had given him orders to do so. If he couldn't accomplish them, how could he possibly have the face to report back to her? Since you're so stubborn, I guess you can just die. Dugubatian took a deep breath, causing terrifying power to erupt from his bloodthirsty devil sword. It was filled with an aura of death and resentment. Even from 1,000 meters away, the terrifying aura was enough to cause anyone to tremble in fear. By this point, Sword God City was virtually empty. Everyone, including the imperial family, had already left. The city was on the verge of collapsing at any moment. In a battle between two 5th Division life seizers, not even sword gods or sword sages would be able to put up much of a fight. Now I understand why Dugubatian killed so many people, and why he built the bloodthirsty sword mound. Ling Xiao's brow was furrowed. Although the terrifying battlefield didn't strike fear into him, it did strike fear into his heart. What's going on, boss? Little Jean asked. That bloodthirsty devil sword is filled with the vengeful souls and resentment of countless people, Dugubajian explained. I can't believe Dugubajian is using the power of death. That guy is crazy. Ling Xiao explained. He's using the dead to get stronger. Little Jean said, shocked. That's right, Dugubajian said. That bloodthirsty devil sword is different from when it was in the bloodthirsty sword mound. Not only is it filled with blood energy, but it's also filled with an aura of death. Ling Xiao nodded. I'm afraid Mammoth Mountain is going to die beyond the shadow of a doubt. Dugubajian is strong enough to fight Mammoth Mountain to a standstill. If he uses the power of death in his bloodthirsty devil sword, he'll surpass Mammoth Mountain in battle prowess and be close to the 6th division of life seizing. It didn't take long for his speculations to become reality. By this point, Dugubajian's skin had turned completely red. He looked like a monster. Don't tell me he's turned himself into a blood devil? Little Jean could sense the terrifying aura radiating off of Dugubajian. That should be the case, Dugubajian said. He's a human, and he's been absorbing the power of death for hundreds of years. His body wouldn't be able to handle it. He'd have to turn himself into a monster. Ling Xiao gritted his teeth as he realized that Dugubajian really was willing to do anything to get stronger. Prepare to die, Mammoth Mountain from the myriad kingdoms. Dugubajian's voice became strange. It was thick and filled with a terrifying and gloomy aura. I can only use a tiny bit of the power of the bloodthirsty devil sword, but it's more than enough to kill you. Are you really that confident? Chapter 3243. Do you think you can kill me like this? Xiangshan was not afraid of Dugubajian, who had used the power of the dead. Instead, he transformed into a huge dracophant, emitting an ancient aura. Of course, I originally planned to use these things in the immemorial divine tomb. Now that I've used them on you, it can be considered as testing their power. Dugubajian sneered. As they spoke, the battle erupted again. After using the power of the dead, Dugubajian's strength skyrocketed, and he began to suppress Xiangshan in all aspects. Although Xiangshan's dracophant's combat strength had increased, it was still lacking compared to the power of the dead. Originally, the two of them were evenly matched, but now Dugubajian had the upper hand. Xiangshan's situation was getting worse and worse. If not for the dracophant's thick skin, he would have been seriously injured. Is this considered cheating? Xiao Jin smiled bitterly and said, It's impossible for this power to have no side effects. Otherwise, it would be too abnormal. Indeed, there are no side effects. Ling Xiao shook his head and said, If there is one, it's because Dugubajian has refined his body into a blood demon body. He can't use many human martial skills. Moreover, the power of the dead consumes a lot of physical strength. He won't be able to maintain this crazy state for long. So that's how it is. Xiao Jin looked at the battle again. Just as Ling Xiao had analyzed, Dugubajian was eager to end the battle because the power of the dead consumed too much of his body. Die! 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 Dugubajian roared. His originally calm face became incomparably serious. Blood-red light constantly flashed on his body, and there were even black dead souls trying to escape from his body. It could be seen that his strength had skyrocketed, but he had to spend a lot of energy to suppress those dead souls. Damn it! Let's see how long you can last. Xiangshan was not a weakling. At this point, he could only go all out. It was impossible to escape. Once he did, he would give his back to his opponent and become a target. He could only fight now. Ling Xiao watched the battle excitedly. Suddenly he frowned. Golden Dragon Seal. Dugubajian is going to use the Golden Dragon Seal. Back then, he had only learned of the existence of the Golden Dragon Seal, a high-level general martial technique from Jian Fulong. Unlike the bloodthirsty swordsmanship, whose power was close to that of a high-level general realm martial technique, this was a genuine high-level general realm martial technique. If Xiangshan is hit by this move, he will definitely die. Ling Xiao could feel how terrifying the Golden Dragon Seal was. At this moment, a large amount of true yuan gushed out of Dugubajian's body. It turned into a dazzling golden light. The golden light gradually condensed into the shape of a golden dragon in the sky. Die, Xiangshan! Let this golden dragon seal end your life. Roar! The golden dragon let out a resonant dragon roar and pounced towards Xiangshan. In that instant, the weather changed. The entire Sword Master City was enveloped in golden light. Ling Xiao knew very well that he couldn't block such a powerful attack. Even if he activated all of his defensive skills, it would still be useless. Unless he used Life Rewind, he would definitely die. This move was too powerful. Not only did it use all of Dugubajian's strength, but it also used the power of the dead. How could Xiangshan block it? Damn it! How can this guy be so powerful? Xiangshan's expression changed drastically when he saw the huge golden dragon pouncing towards him. He really regretted it now. It was unwise to make an enemy out of Dugubajian without understanding him. However, he couldn't admit defeat just like that. He was a martial artist of the 10,000 countries Dragonesque Elephant Clan. How could he lose to a useless emperor of the Sword Dynasty? Dragonesque Elephant Divine Fist. 800 Dragonesque Elephants. As he roared, Dragonesque Elephant also used all of his true yuan in this attack. A terrifying gale whistled violently around his body. He punched out with both fists. Between heaven and earth, 800 huge Dragonesque elephant phantoms appeared and pounced towards Dugubajian's golden dragon. No matter what, he had to tear this golden dragon apart. Otherwise, if that terrifying power bombarded his body, he would definitely die. Dugubajian's martial technique was a high-level general realm martial technique. Xiangshan's martial technique was also a high-level general realm martial technique. From this, one could see the decline of the Sword Dynasty. In the entire Sword Dynasty, only the Emperor knew a high-level general realm martial technique. And in the 10,000 countries, any martial artist with a little talent could cultivate a high-level general realm martial technique. 800 Dragonesque elephants collided with the golden dragon seal in the sky. A stalemate. Golden light and white light constantly devoured each other and cancelled each other out. But one had to admit that Dugubajian, who had the power of the dead, was still too powerful. Even though their martial technique levels were the same, his golden dragon was still constantly devouring those dragonesque elephants. However, the power of a high-level general realm martial technique could not be underestimated. Xiangshan crazily attacked, wanting to see who would exhaust who to death first. What Dugubajian was most afraid of was the consumption of the power of the dead, and Xiangshan's continuous dragonesque elephant divine fist was constantly consuming his true yuan. Whichever side couldn't withstand it first would be the side that would be defeated. Boss, who do you think will lose? Xiao Jin asked. If this goes on, the first one to lose will definitely be Dugubajian. His consumption is too great. Ling Xiao said, but if I were Dugubajian, I would absorb more power of the dead at all costs and strive to take down Xiangshan in one fell swoop. Before his voice fell, Dugubajian seemed to be connected with his mind. Sure enough, he absorbed more power of the dead from the bloodthirsty, demonic sword. At that moment, black threads appeared on the golden dragon's body. The power of the golden dragon also soared several times in an instant. Boom! Xiangshan finally couldn't resist and was sent flying by the terrifying power. And this was because of the 800 dragonesque elephants. If he had been hit directly, even he would have been beaten half to death at this moment. The older the ginger, the spicier it is. If there are no accidents, Dugubajian will definitely win. Ling Xiao sighed. On the path of martial arts, to reach the peak, one's lifespan was indispensable. Generally speaking, most martial artists who had not reincarnated had a lifespan of less than 200 years, unless they had consumed special pills or treasures. And after that, every time they reincarnated, their lifespan would increase by 200 years. In other words, a first transition martial artist actually had a lifespan of about 400 years. A martial artist who had gone through 10 reincarnations could live up to more than 2,000 years. Dugubejian had already lived for more than 300 years, and his lifespan was basically coming to an end. So there was nothing he could be afraid of. He wanted to go to the immemorial divine tomb to break through his strength as soon as possible, and then strive to live longer. Rumor had it that once a martial artist cultivated to the reincarnation divine realm, their life would stop aging until the next reincarnation. Chapter 3244. Dugubejian wanted to break through to the reincarnation god realm as soon as possible so that he could have an ageless body. Of course, there were conditions. If a martial artist couldn't break through to the next level, not only would they begin to age, but they would also age faster. It was as if the magical laws of heaven and earth were there to push a martial artist to become stronger, rather than being stuck in the same old rut. Mammoth Mountain was still struggling, but he was clearly an arrow at the end of its flight. Stubbornly resisting is useless. You came all the way to the Sword Dynasty. Do you think the people here are easy to bully? Unfortunately, you're wrong. Very wrong. Dugubejian's cold voice echoed through the air. The golden dragon smashed through all of the Dracomamoth projections, then slammed into Mammoth Mountain. Ling Xiao chuckled at the sight of Mammoth Mountain. All of a sudden, he thought of Wang Quan. Back then, Wang Quan Tianming had gone to the Eight Immortals' kingdom and even destroyed the Eight Immortals' city, wanting to kill him. But in the end, Ling Xiao had killed him with the Black Devil. Sometimes in the mystic world, even a lion might not be able to defeat a rabbit. After all, the rabbit might have some secret magic that could turn itself into a ferocious monster. Mammoth Mountain was pitiful, but Ling Xiao didn't think he deserved to die. He was a complete idiot. He didn't even know Dugubejian's background, yet he was so aggressive that he wanted to steal the throne. Now he was an idiot. Dragon Mother, save me. Xiang Shan let out a mournful cry before he died. If he had known things would turn out like this, he wouldn't have come here to die. Rumble. The golden dragon tore through Mammoth Mountain's body, and he transformed into a rain of blood that rained down on Sword God City. 3 fifth-stage life-seizers from the myriad kingdoms had thought they could control the Sword Dynasty. In the end, 2 of them were killed by Little Gold and 1 by Dugubejian. They didn't even cause a ripple before they were gone. The sight of Mammoth Mountain's death caused everyone in Sword God City to cheer. The only reason they could live in Sword God City was because they were related to the imperial family. If they didn't support Dugubejian, who would they support? Dugubejian slowly withdrew the power of the dead. At this moment, his complexion was deathly pale. Clearly, he had overexerted himself. If it had been any later, the one who would have died would not have been Xiang Shan, but him. Boss, should we take this opportunity to kill this old thing? Xiao Jin asked. You hide and I'll take action. Because I don't know who's behind Dugubejian, I'll choose to run if there's any danger. It's best if you don't come out. The legendary ancestor doesn't exist at all. Let's work together to kill Dugubejian. Ling Xiao was very cautious, especially when he saw Xiang Shan being killed by Dugubejian. He understood one thing. When it came to forces that he didn't understand, it was best not to expose himself if he could. Since the other party has a trump card, you have to have even more trump cards. Otherwise, the odds are against you. After the 2 of them came to an agreement, Ling Xiao suddenly soared into the sky. Without another word, he took out the ice-revered sword and charged over. Dugubejian was recuperating when he suddenly felt a powerful aura break through the air. Startled, he assumed that Xiang Shan wasn't dead, but then he realized that it was Ling Xiao. It's you, Dugubejian said, breathing a sigh of relief. Although Ling Xiao was incredibly talented and had even destroyed a devil dragon puppet, rumors were just rumors. How could he possibly compare to a true 5th division life-sizer like Xiang Shan? That's right, it's me. Ling Xiao immediately entered the everlasting heavenly mouse beast soul, transformation state and released all of his other beast souls. He used his strongest state aside from the Sky Tyrant Martial soul to fight Dugubajian. Do you want to follow in Xiang Shan's footsteps? Dugubajian asked angrily. At the moment, he was very weak, and Ling Xiao had chosen to attack him at the wrong time. All he could do was threaten Dugubajian with words. But how could Ling Xiao possibly be scared? Dugubajian had no choice but to dodge, and his body was already riddled with wounds. Your Majesty, we're here to help you. Eunuch Gao and the other ministers of the Sword Dynasty flew up into the air, hoping to stop Ling Xiao and give Dugubajian a chance to recover. You pieces of trash, Dugubajian said. Other than Eunuch Gao, none of you are even close to being my match. Ling Xiao blurred into motion. Not bothering to fight, he used the evading sword-light steps to evade them, then stabbed his sword into Dugubajian's abdomen. Blood sprayed out. Dugubajian howled in agony. He couldn't control the bloodthirsty demon sword in his hand. A large amount of undead power surged out of the bloodthirsty demon sword and poured into Dugubajian's body. In that moment, Dugubajian's body grew larger, and his previously blood-red skin turned a greenish-black. He seemed to have lost consciousness, and yet he was terrifyingly strong. Suddenly, a palm slapped toward him. It moved so quickly that not even Ling Xiao's evading sword-light steps could evade it. He had no choice but to block with his sword. Bam! The palm slapped Dugubajian, sending him crashing into the ground of the imperial city. The martial artists in Sword God City applauded. However, before the experts up in the air could even mock Ling Xiao, they sensed that something was wrong. The terrifying slap was like swatting a mosquito, swatting towards them. Among the crowd, only Eunuch Gao managed to escape. The rest were all smashed into meat patties. Are you all right, boss? Something's wrong with Dugubajian. Little Gold asked from within the spirit ring. Something's wrong. Before, he was the one controlling the bloodthirsty demon sword. But now, it's the sword that's controlling him. He's completely lost his mind. He's turned into a monster. Ling Xiao crawled to his feet, feeling as if several of his ribs had been broken. However, he didn't seem to be in the least bit of a bad mood, because with this slap he actually broke through. He was now in the third stage of the life-seizing level. Earlier, he had been accumulating power in his sea of cultivation and had been missing an opportunity like this. Who could have guessed that he would break through like this? He really had to thank Dugubajian. Do you still want to fight, boss? Little Gold asked. Of course I do. This guy might have lost his mind, but his fighting prowess has skyrocketed. He's perfect for a sparring partner. Ling Xiao looked excitedly at the monster that was 7 to 8 meters tall. It was clearly a human, but it was shaped like a sphere. Let's see what a first-cycle life-sizer can do. Ling Xiao took a step forward, and once again flew up into the air. Earlier, when the monster had slapped him, he hadn't been able to evade. But now that he had broken through, things were different. He could sense that his speed, strength, and perception had all improved. Now, when the monster's palm slapped him, he could react in the blink of an eye. Chapter 3245. You've turned yourself into an idiot by trying to use forbidden power, haven't you? After reaching the third stage of the life-seizing level, Ling Xiao's fighting prowess had skyrocketed. Even if he had to face the monster that had sent him flying with a single slap, he would be able to handle it with ease. The revered ice sword in his hand was like a scalpel, constantly slicing the monster in front of him. However, the monster seemed to be affected by the power of the revenants. Even when it was sliced open, the wounds would heal in an instant. It was practically immortal. However, Ling Xiao noticed one thing. Every time he attacked, a bit of revenant power would escape from the wound, but instead of returning to the bloodthirsty demon sword, it would disappear into the sky. Most likely it would go to paradise. Rumor had it that when evil people died, they would go to the underworld. When ordinary people and good people died, they would go to paradise. When devils became devils, they would go to the devil world. When immortals became immortals, they would go to the immortal world. Of course, Ling Xiao didn't know if the rumor was true or not. All he knew was that the souls had transformed into white light and disappeared. The revenant power had also disappeared. Ling Xiao was certain that if this continued, the monster Dugobatian had transformed and would soon collapse. However, at that very moment, something strange happened. Ling Xiao suddenly retreated a few hundred meters, looking in the direction of the imperial palace in horror. There, a huge shadow crawled out from the ground. Its entire body seemed to be flowing with boiling lava. It was a bizarre sight. It looked very human, but it was so huge that it was at least a dozen meters tall. His eyes were burning with magma-like flames. "You disappoint me, Dugobatian." The monster spoke in the human tongue. Then it opened its mouth and inhaled. Large amounts of revenant power flew into its mouth. Dugobatian quickly returned to normal, but he was clearly weak. "Patriarch, you finally awakened," Dugobatian said excitedly. "It took me hundreds of years to awaken you. Our sword dynasty is saved. So, are you going to make a final contribution to me?" The huge monster absorbed almost all of Dugobajian's undead energy and said coldly. Ling Xiao originally thought that he was going to face an attack, but he didn't expect things to develop in a strange direction. Thus, he retreated to the side and observed the situation. "Old ancestor, feel free to instruct me. As long as it's something you need, I'll definitely do it," Dugobajian said. "Ha ha ha, that's for the best. I want your body. Are you willing to give it to me?" The giant monster laughed maniacally. Hearing this, Dugobajian's expression changed greatly. "Ancestor, are you joking? If it weren't for me, you would have died hundreds of years ago. You wouldn't have been able to wake up. So what? Are you asking me to be grateful to you?" The monster sneered. "As a junior of the Sword Dynasty, you should give everything you have. What's more, once this old man has taken over your body, I can use your body to rule the entire Sword Empire. Even the forces of the 9 Supremes, which are much stronger than you. You should be able to rest in peace." "No, I don't want to die. I don't want it." Dugobajian's expression changed greatly. He had always thought that he had taken every conceivable possibility into account. However, he had never expected that the old ancestor whom he had always carefully protected and whom he thought to be his greatest backer would instead become his most terrifying enemy. "That's not up to you," the monster sneered. Then the giant body turned into a black smoke and pounced at Dugobajian. Dugobajian was already very weak, so he couldn't resist the black smoke at all. "No, even if I have to self-destruct, I won't give my body to you." Dugobajian roared furiously as he resisted, but it was to no avail. The black smoke continued to pour into his body. At this moment, another person flew over from the sky. It was the Crown Princess Morongqi. "Morongqi, save me. This old thing is just a soul now. As long as we work together, we can kill him." Dugobajian roared as if he had seen his savior. "Work together with you? Why, with your strength, when will you be able to help my Morong clan restore the country?" Morongqi looked coldly at Dugobajian and said, "Thank you for taking care of me for so many years. Therefore, I won't kill you, but it's impossible for me to save you. You ungrateful bitch. If it wasn't for me, you would have died under the Ice Dynasty's pursuit. You actually betrayed me now." Dugobajian's heart turned cold. He didn't know what he had done wrong. The old ancestor that he had carefully protected wanted to take over his body. The Crown Princess Morongqi that he had protected and nurtured actually watched him die without saving him. He was truly in despair. "Your Majesty, this old servant will save you." Most of the cultivators who were originally loyal to Dugobajian looked at this scene in horror, not daring to do anything. Only the castrated eunuch, Gao, turned out to be a loyal and righteous person. He knew that he was no match for the monster, but he wasn't willing to stand by and watch. Ling Xiao really admired this old eunuch. No one would hate such a loyal person. "Are you looking to die?" Crown Princess Morongqi blurred into motion. appearing directly in front of Eunuch Gao. Glaring coldly at him, she said, "Get the hell out of here or die!" As of this moment, Ling Xiao realized that the Crown Princess Morongqi had been putting on an act outside of the Devil Dragon Sword Court. Her true strength was most likely in the 5th division of the life-seizing level. In other words, she was far more terrifying than Dugubajian. Ignoring Morongqi's threat, Eunuch Gao swung his horsetail whisk and attacked. In the end, he was like a moth drawn to a flame. Morongqi was far stronger than he was. With a single palm strike, she sent him flying. Most likely, he wasn't going to survive. Ling Xiao couldn't bear to see such a loyal person die. Blurring into motion, he appeared behind Eunuch Gao and supported him. Eunuch Gao had assumed that Ling Xiao was going to take advantage of the situation to kill him. But to his surprise, not only did Ling Xiao not kill him, he even gave him a healing pill. Why? "Your loyalty is admirable," Yang Qi said coolly. Ling Xiao said indifferently, "Moreover, there isn't much enmity between you and me. We're just enemies. Please, I beg of you, save His Majesty. You're the only one who can save him." Eunuch Gao cried. "That's impossible," Ling Xiao said, shaking his head. "I can save you, but don't even think about saving Dugubajian." Yang Qi wasn't the type of person to be overly compassionate. He knew exactly what kind of person Dugubajian was. Although he was pitiful, he knew that it was just a dog-eat-dog situation. It didn't matter who died, it would only benefit Yang Qi. "Ling Xiao," Eunuch Gao said, "if you save me, I'll give you all of this country." Chapter 3246. Jiangshan, there's no need for you to send me. I'll come and get it myself. Ling Xiao said indifferently, "Idiot, you're not a match for Morongqi. Once this old monster obtains my body, your dragon elephant tribe will be finished." Dugubajian roared, "Won't my dragon elephant tribe be finished if I save you? You're just about the same." Ling Xiao said sarcastically, "Don't waste your energy. You can continue messing around. I'll be leaving first." "Wait!" Dugubajian suddenly shouted and threw the bloodthirsty demon's sword at Ling Xiao. "Since you're not willing to save me, then avenge me." Ling Xiao caught the bloodthirsty demon's sword and said with a smile, "Avenge you? I'm not that kind. However, I'll definitely kill this old monster. He's so ungrateful that he won't even let his own family off. This kind of person is a scourge to keep." "That's enough. Ha ha ha, ha 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 ha, Dugukanjing. I'll be leaving first. However, so what if you have my body? You'll die sooner or later. I'll wait for that day." Dugubajian knew that he was finished, but even so, he didn't want Dugukanjing to have an easy time. However, it was ironic that he had to place all his hopes on Ling Xiao. It was truly laughable. "Don't worry, after taking your body, this old man will naturally kill him as well." Dugukanjing suddenly sped up the process of possession. The terrifying black smoke made Dugubajian unable to speak anymore. Ling Xiao glanced at Eunuch Gao. "Let's go together or you'll die." "No, take this with you. It's something that His Majesty asked me to keep. Since His Majesty is counting on you to take revenge, it's fine to give it to you. I've followed His Majesty for hundreds of years. If His Majesty dies, I'll go with him." Eunuch Gao shook his head and said with a firm tone, "All right." Although it was a pity, Ling Xiao knew that he couldn't stay here. Once Dugukanjing took over Dugubajian's body, no one knew how powerful he would become. Therefore, Ling Xiao really had to leave. "Can you leave?" Morongqi blocked Ling Xiao's way. You can't stop me." Ling Xiao put away the bloodthirsty demon sword. It was better not to use that thing for the time being, because no one knew what side effects it would have. As for what Eunuch Gao had given him, it was the 9 Supremes catalog from Dugubajian and the advanced general-level martial art technique, Golden Dragon Seal. He glanced at it and was pleasantly surprised. Who would have thought that he would be able to obtain all these things at the same time by chance today? He was content. After putting away the items, he stabbed out with his sword. His target was Murongchi. At first, Murongchi didn't put Ling Xiao in his eyes. However, only when Ling Xiao's sword was right in front of her did she realize to her horror that she was unable to block this sword and had no choice but to dodge. Ling Xiao did not continue fighting. He executed sword-light steps and instantly disappeared into the distance. Not long after he left, the black smoke finally disappeared completely. Dugubajian had his hands behind his back as he looked down coldly. From today onwards, I, Dugu Kanjing, am the emperor of the Sword Dynasty. It wasn't until this voice sounded that everyone finally understood that Dugubajian was dead. Or rather, only his shell was left. His soul had been destroyed. Although the person standing there looked exactly the same as Dugubajian, it was another person. The entire Sword God City was dead silent. Countless people hated the ungrateful Dugu Kanjing. They hated the ungrateful Murongchi. However, at this moment they only felt fear. Emperor? Bah! Suddenly, a discordant voice sounded. It was Eunuch Gao. I didn't expect that the only man in Sword God City who looks like a man is actually a man who isn't a man. Dugu Kanjing looked at Eunuch Gao and smiled. You are very loyal. I like it very much. You will follow me and serve me in the future. I have served the Hegemon Sword Emperor for hundreds of years. How can I submit to the person who killed him? Eunuch Gao said coldly. Even in the face of the powerful Dugu Kanjing, he was still fearless. Haha, I know you are loyal, but Dugubajian is already dead. Why are you so stubborn? Follow me, and you might have a chance to take revenge. Dugu Kanjing smiled. Revenge? No. I have already handed the matter of revenge to the Emperor of the Eight Immortals Nation, Ling Xiao. Although he is an enemy, he is more trustworthy than you. Although he is an enemy, I have to admit that he is talented. It won't be long before you and that woman are dead. Eunuch Gao said coldly. Is that Ling Xiao? Humph. Men, lock this old eunuch up. I want him to witness the extinguishment of hope with his own eyes. I want him to see Ling Xiao being killed with his own eyes. Dugu Kanjing sneered and shouted sternly. Murongchi took action to restrain Eunuch Gao. The group of experts who were originally loyal to Dugubajian swarmed forward and held Eunuch Gao down. Throw him into the prison. Don't let him commit suicide. I want him to be in complete despair. Dugu Kanjing said indifferently. Your Majesty is wise. Countless people knelt down and swore allegiance to Dugu Kanjing. In the distance, Ling Xiao, who had restrained his aura, sighed and said, It's a pity that there is only one man in Sword God City. This Dugu Kanjing is even more inhumane than Dugubajian. If he becomes the emperor, the Sword Dynasty will be done for. Looks like we have to speed up the process. Boss, what should we do next? Xiao Jin asked. Next, I have to tame the bloodthirsty demon sword and cultivate the golden dragon seal. Although I have obtained the 9 Supremes catalog, I still lack the key to the myriad countries' earthen path. So I still can't cultivate the 9 Supremes sword technique. However, the golden dragon seal is enough for now. Ling Xiao thought for a while and said, Dugubajian said that the 2 envoys are going to hold a Fiend God tea party for the experts of the Sword Dynasty to compete for the Fiend God token. Boss, are you going? Xiao Jin asked again. Of course, there are only 3 Fiend God tokens in the Sword Dynasty. We can't let those guys take them away. Ling Xiao nodded. The 2 of you don't even think about going anywhere. You will die here today. Suddenly, Dugubajian's voice sounded. Ling Xiao knew that trouble was coming. The one who had occupied Dugubajian's body was Dugu Kanjing. How could that old thing be so fast? And how did he find out about him? These questions were difficult to answer, but Ling Xiao knew that they were in trouble. However, he still maintained his calm. With Xiao Jin as his trump card and the Sky Tyrant martial spirit, he might not be afraid of Dugu Kanjing. Haha, isn't this the new emperor, Dugu Kanjing? Why are you not staying in your palace? What are you doing here? Ling Xiao smiled and instantly entered the peerless heavenly mouse beast spirit transformation state. However, he still did not let Xiao Jin show himself. Kid, stop playing dumb. Hand over the bloodthirsty demon sword and the golden dragon seal, as well as the 9 Supremes catalog on Dugubajian. This old man can spare your life. Chapter 3247. You think you can bite me to death if I don't hand over the bloodthirsty demon sword? Ling Xiao looked at Dugu Kanjing. Dugu Kanjing was so powerful that even he was a little wary. However, there was no way he would hand over the bloodthirsty demon sword, the 9 Supremes catalog, and the golden dragon seal. At most, he could use the earth elemental golden light art and life rewind to escape. It was not like he had never done such a thing before. Young man, it's not easy for you to get to where you are today. Don't cut off your own path of retreat. Dugu Kanjing frowned. If you could kill me that easily, you would have done so long ago. In my opinion, you have just succeeded in possessing Dugu Kanjing's body and have yet to adapt to it. Ling Xiao said coldly, am I right? Good boy, you have good eyesight, but so what? This old man is just too lazy to waste energy. Since you don't want to listen, I can only kill you. With that, Dugu Kanjing suddenly attacked. Emperor Hegemon's sword. The same move, when used by Dugu Kanjing, was more than 10 times stronger than Dugu Kanjing's. Ling Xiao really did not dare to meet force with force. However, that did not mean that he could not dodge it. Earth Elemental Golden Light Art. Ling Xiao did not use the sword light steps. Instead, he used his fastest divine ability. In that instant, he got close to Dugu Kanjing's body. This greatly surprised Dugu Kanjing. He was surprised by Ling Xiao's terrifying speed. He was even more surprised that Ling Xiao did not escape but attacked instead. All right, since you want to die, this old man will fulfill your wish. Dugu Kanjing once again waved the sword in his hand and stabbed at Ling Xiao. However, because it was a hasty attack this time and he did not use any martial technique, the power was not as strong as before. Ling Xiao saw the opportunity and summoned the rock devil that he had prepared. At the same time, he used invincible Vajra. Crack! Despite the many defenses, Dugu Kanjing's sword still stabbed Ling Xiao. This old man was really terrifyingly powerful. However, it was merely a stab. Ling Xiao instantly transformed into his golden phoenix form, and his main body launched a brazen attack. Ghost King Overlord Sword. Dugu Kanjing didn't dare to not block this attack, as he had condensed almost all of his strength into it. Brat, you have such a powerful attack. No wonder you dare to behave atrociously in Sword God City. However, this is the end for you. Dugu Kanjing waved his hand as a blob of black gas lingered, forming a gigantic black claw that easily blocked the Ghost King Overlord Sword. Hey, old thing, you've been tricked. Ling Xiao's lips curled into a mocking smile. However, Dugu Kanjing still didn't know what he was planning. At this moment, a resplendent golden light shot out from Ling Xiao's beast ring, instantly striking Dugu Kanjing. No matter how much the old man calculated, he would never have thought that there was such a powerful demon beast hiding in Ling Xiao's beast ring. Xiao Jin attacked without the slightest intention of holding back. The terrifying 9 nether yellow springs golden light exploded. It left behind a huge hole in Dugu Kanjing's body. It even emitted a charred smell. Go to hell, old man. Ling Xiao was unforgiving after gaining the upper hand. He suddenly blasted a fist out, smashing it towards Dugu Kanjing's head. However, right at this time, a terrifying black fog was released from Dugu Kanjing's body, instantly forming a black monster that was over 12 meters tall. That monster's arm swept across the sky, forcing Ling Xiao and Xiao Jin to have no choice but to dodge. Tisk, just a little bit more. It'll be hard to kill this old fellow again. Ling Xiao was very clear that the reason why he was able to heavily injure Dugu Kanjing this time was entirely because of Xiao Jin, this explosive point. Now that Xiao Jin was exposed, it would be difficult to ambush again. What a cunning brat! Just you wait. The giant monster behind Dugu, Kanjing spewed out a cloud of black smoke. The smoke was mixed with sparks, actually forcing Ling Xiao and Xiao Jin to have no choice but to turn around and dodge. They could only watch as Dugu Kanjing fled toward Sword God City. Should we chase him, boss? Xiao Jin asked. Chase him, my ass. Didn't you see that monster just now? We can't beat him right now. If I'm not mistaken, that old bastard's fighting prowess is probably close to the 6th level of life seizing. He just hasn't recovered his old cultivation base. If Murong Qi joins the fray, we won't be able to take advantage of him. Ling Xiao also wanted to kill Dugu Kanjing, but the fight had made him realize that he wasn't strong enough to do so. In any case, he wasn't in a hurry. He believed that with his talent, the longer he delayed, the greater his advantage would be. Right now, the one who should be anxious wasn't him, but Dugu Kanjing. I'll do as you say, boss. Xiao Jin knew that Ling Xiao's judgment wasn't wrong. It had always been that way. So what do we do next? Xiao Jin asked. Let's go back to the Dragon Mammoth tribe. Ling Xiao thought for a moment, then jumped onto Xiao Jin's back and sped toward the Dragon Mammoth tribe. After returning to the Dragon Mammoth tribe, Ling Xiao left them in the care of Emperor Dragon Mammoth and the others, then went into seclusion. He wanted to use this time to master the bloodthirsty demon sword and the golden dragon seal. Remember, if there's any news about the God Devil medallion, regardless of whether I'm out or not, you have to notify me immediately. That was the last command Ling Xiao gave before he went into seclusion. For 10 days, Ling Xiao remained in seclusion. The Dragon Mammoth tribe didn't encounter any trouble, and everything was peaceful. If there were any changes, it would be that many of the smaller nations and powers that had been subordinate to the Sword God Hall had come to the Dragon Mammoth tribe. Presumably, news of what had happened in Sword God City had already spread. Dugu Kanjing had possessed Dugu Batian, and many of his loyalists had chosen to join the 8 Immortals' kingdom. Those who were already dissatisfied with the Sword God Hall were now willing to cheer for the 8 Immortals' kingdom. In just 10 days, the 8 Immortals' kingdom had occupied half of the entire Sword dynasty. Your Majesty, there's important news. A voice suddenly came from outside. Ling Xiao's eyes slowly opened, revealing a deathly gray color. If his opponents saw this kind of expression, they would probably be shocked. He had already grasped the bloodthirsty demon, Sword's mysteries. However, he wasn't that proficient in the control of the power of the dead. He actually had over 100 million power of the dead. What he could control now was only about 1,000 power of the 100 million power of the dead. Even so, it could increase his combat strength by about 10 times without any side effects. It was obviously more useful than the bloodthirsty demon rat. However, the power of the dead in the bloodthirsty demon's sword would disappear. Every time he used it, he would lose the same amount of power of the dead. If he wanted to replenish it, he could only keep killing. Although Ling Xiao couldn't kill the innocent like Dugu Batian and Dugu Kanjing, this was the mystic world, a world of martial artists. It was still possible to replenish some power of the dead. He didn't feel that there was anything evil about it. Chapter 3248. In addition to the bloodthirsty demon swords, Ling Xiao also had the golden dragon seal at the level of mastery. If he wanted to improve his mastery, he would have to rely on actual combat. With that, he stepped out of seclusion. What's the big news? The God Devil emissaries have appeared in the Sun Sea and announced that they're holding a God Devil tea party. They've invited all 3rd Division Life Seizers from the Sword Dynasty, as well as all 6th Division Life Seizers. Ling Xiao couldn't help but frown. What are the God Devil emissaries up to? I can understand why they want the Sword Dynasty to compete, but why are the other 8 divisions allowed to compete as well? Although there's a limit to how strong they can compete, based on Mammoth Mountain's performance, 5th Division Life Seizers don't count for much. I'm afraid only a handful of people from the Sword Dynasty are qualified to compete. As far as he was concerned, the god-devil emissaries were simply looking down on the Sword Dynasty and were worried that the god-devil medallions would go to waste. Got it. Off you go. Ling Shao waved his hand dismissively, then headed to the command center to inform his superiors that he was going to the Sun Sea. This time around, Jian Fulong and Xiao Jin were going with him. Ling Shao knew very well that the others would only be spectators if they went, and their lives might even be in danger. 5 days later, the three of them arrived at the Sun Sea. There were only 2 days left until the tea party began. According to the god-devil emissaries, if they didn't show up on time, they would be considered to have given up on competing for the god-devil medallions. In a way, they were helping the Sword Dynasty. With so many advantages, if the Sword Dynasty couldn't get 1 or 2 god-devil medallions, it would be a huge loss of face. So this is the Sun Sea? The water is golden. How strange! Ling Shao looked down at the sea below. He had never seen anything like it before. According to the rumors, this place is home to a 5th Division life-sizer, a sunbird. Jian Fulong said. That's why the water here is so golden. Jian Fulong explained with a smile. Oh, so that's how it is. I wonder if the sunbird is stronger or little gold. Ling Shao smiled. I'm not too sure about that. However, after the tea party is over, we can go and take a look. Perhaps it will be of great help to little gold in improving his strength. Jian Fulong added. As they spoke, the three of them landed on a small island in the Sun Ocean. This island was where the tea party of gods and devils would be held. In the middle of the island, there was a huge arena. The arena was made of special materials, and it was obviously built temporarily. However, he had set up layers upon layers of formations. It was almost impossible for ordinary attacks to destroy them. There were many spectator stands around the arena, and many martial artists had already gathered there. The three of them observed the situation in the arena for a while, then turned and left. There were still 2 days before the tea of gods and devils. There was no need to waste time. He could take advantage of this opportunity to take a look around the Sun Ocean. When Ling Shao had first arrived at the Sword Dynasty, he had heard about the Sun Ocean. It was said that the sunbird might be even stronger than Dugabajian. However, it was unclear whether the rumors were true or not. In the Sun Ocean, not only was the ocean golden, even the forest was golden. It gave off an incomparably holy and mysterious aura. Ling Shao walked alone in the forest, and the atmosphere was a little tense. Jian Fulong needed to recover his cultivation and fight for a god-fiend token. Hence, he was currently cultivating on the island. Little Gold returned to the beast ring. Along the way, Ling Shao encountered many beasts, but he did not launch an attack. Instead, he used the sword light step to avoid them. Those beasts were too weak, and there was no need to fight them. Instead, it would be a waste of energy. What he wanted to see the most now was the sunbird. Within the golden light, there was a blazing heat. Ling Shao had no choice but to transform into the undying bird-beast soul. As the transformation was completed, his body also released the aura of a beast. As it was more powerful, no other beast dared to take the initiative to attack him. Could this be the ruins of the Sun City? Before he came here, he had heard about it from Jian Fulong. In the past, the Sun Ocean had a very majestic city known as the Sun City. At that time, even the ancestors of the Sword Dynasty were very wary of the strength of the Sun City. But later on, for some unknown reason, the Sun City was destroyed overnight and completely disappeared from the surface of the earth. Some people said that the Sun City sank into the sea. Some people said that the Sun City was destroyed by a battle between martial artists. In short, the Sun City was now left with some dilapidated walls. One could not tell that it was once a glorious city. Halt! This is the residence of the Sun Emperor. Insignificant humans are not allowed to enter. Just as Ling Shao was advancing towards the ruins of the Sun City, a martial artist wearing golden armor suddenly appeared in front of him. Although the appearance was human, Ling Shao could feel the aura of a beast from his body. Insignificant human? Haha! This Sun City was once built by humans. I'm just going in to take a look. Move aside, you're not my match. Ling Xiao did not make a move. In his eyes, beasts with intelligence were no different from humans. As long as they did not offend him, he generally would not take the initiative to attack. That's impossible. The golden-armored martial artist shook his head and instantly changed back to his original form. It turned out that it was actually a huge golden battle wolf. This fellow's body actually contained a small amount of the power of the sun. It was probably bestowed to him by the sun bird. Not stopping, Dai. Since there's no way to reason, then we can only fight. Although Ling Xiao was not willing to be enemies with the beasts here, he only wanted to find the Sun Emperor to have a chat. But since the other party did not give him face, then the only way was to fight. These demonic beasts were able to occupy human territories because they were strong enough. And if Ling Xiao wanted to go to the ruins to search, he had to first defeat these beasts. There was really no reason to talk. The only thing that could be used to talk was only fists. Awoo! The golden battle wolf let out a loud cry. Then its claws slammed on the ground and pounced towards Ling Xiao with the speed of wind and thunder, wanting to kill this insignificant and arrogant human. The golden battle wolf that was covered in golden light released terrifying heat, making Xiao Jin extremely excited. Clearly, it wanted to devour Yang Qi. I'll practice my martial arts, Yang Qi said. I'll leave the rest to you. Smiling, Ling Xiao didn't back up. Facing the sudden attack of the golden battle wolf, he performed an incantation gesture with both hands, causing a golden dragon to appear above his head. Golden dragon seal. Following Ling Xiao's furious roar, the golden dragon broke through the sky and collided with the golden battle wolf in the blink of an eye. Clearly, Ling Xiao's attack was incredibly powerful. The golden battle wolf was only a first-star life-sizer. How could it possibly block the golden dragon seal? Chapter 3249. In the moment that the golden dragon seal swallowed up the battle wolf, the ruins of Sun City began to shine with dazzling golden light. That golden light was filled with rage and killing intent. A sunbird? So, it really is in the 5th division of life-seizing. Ling Xiao looked off into the distance, breathing a sigh of relief. He had been worried that the sunbird would be too strong for him to handle. After all, the demonlings here didn't care about reason and only respected strength. If he were weaker than the sunbird, he wouldn't be able to enter Sun City. Picking up his pace, he headed in the direction of the ruins, where he smelled something that made him excited. It was almost as if he were looking for some treasure that had been buried here for tens of thousands of years. As he approached the ruins, Ling Xiao realized that the temperature here had become even hotter, as though he was close to the sun. His entire body felt like it was about to melt. No wonder the sunbird stayed here for so long, and no one dared to come here to search for treasure. Only I, who have beast souls of the undying bird and the Cerberus, would be able to withstand such heat. Only demonlings like Little Gold would be able to come here. Ling Xiao thought to himself as he sensed the heat. Of course, that was good. The fewer people who came, the better it would be for him. After all, it would prove that Sun City had never been explored before. He refused to believe that Sun City, which had once been so prosperous that even the sword god hall outshone it, would be completely empty. Inside the beast ring, Little Gold seemed very excited. In fact, he seemed even more excited than Ling Xiao. To him, the sunbird was like a huge bag of experience. Although Little Gold was already at the peak of the 5th division of life-seizing, there was no limit to how strong he could get. He wasn't even a match for Duga Kanjiing, much less a 6th division life-sizer. Therefore, Little Gold wanted to get stronger as quickly as possible. Eventually, Ling Xiao arrived at Sun City. Above the ruins, there was a huge sculpture. The sculpture was in the shape of the sun. Although everything else had been melted by the heat, the statue of the sun was still in perfect condition. Despite the passage of time, it hadn't deteriorated. At this moment, a small bird the size of a palm was standing on top of the sun sculpture. The sun sculpture was more than 10 meters tall. If one didn't pay attention, They wouldn't even notice the golden bird standing on top of it. His appearance is quite similar to Xiao Jin's, and his aura is also very similar. It seems that his strength is about the same. Ling Xiao looked at the little golden bird and was quite surprised that the sunbird was so small. However, he was still certain that it was the overlord of this place, the Sun Emperor. "You won't stop me from excavating the treasure, will you?" Ling Xiao looked at the sunbird and said, "I have no intention of being your enemy, but don't fail to appreciate my kindness. That golden battle wolf didn't reason with me, but talked about strength with me, so I killed it. Do you want to follow in its footsteps?" The sunbird coldly stared at Ling Xiao. Suddenly it let out a loud cry. The entire island began to shake. A large number of demonic beasts rushed over from the sky and on the ground. There were more than 100,000 of them densely packed together. Ling Xiao frowned. Speaking of which, the beast tide was only SOSO. There weren't even that many demonic beasts. The sunbird was quite smart. Obviously, it realized that Ling Xiao was an expert, so it planned to use the beast tide tactic. A giant elephant that was more than 10 meters tall, a giant firebird with wings that stretched dozens of meters, a giant crab that was 7 to 8 meters wide crawled out of the sea. In addition, there were countless terrifying demonic beasts that Ling Xiao didn't even know the names of. At this moment, they were all quietly waiting near the palm-sized bird, surrounding it. As expected, you can't judge a bird by its appearance. Ling Xiao sighed. The bird didn't look like much, but it had the ability to control almost all the demonic beasts in the Sun Sea. Fortunately, Ling Xiao was strong enough. Otherwise, he could only turn around and run. The sunbird released a shocking killing intent and locked onto Ling Xiao. At that moment, it was like the king of all beasts. Speaking of which, there's no need to make such a big scene. I'm just here to take a look at the ruins, not to be your enemy. Do I really have to do this? Ling Xiao looked at the sunbird, not caring about the other party's killing intent. If he was still in the Sky Dragon continent and encountered such a beast tide, his resistance would have been destroyed. But here, he really had nothing to be afraid of. Whether it was fighting or running, he had a way. "Puny human, you killed my people. You deserve to die." The sunbird gave the order. The beasts were boiling, and all charged at Ling Xiao, wanting to drown Ling Xiao in the beast tide. "You'll definitely regret this decision of yours." Since there was no way to negotiate peacefully, he could only fight. Ling Xiao sneered and instantly entered the unbounded heavenly rat beast soul transformation state. Then, many beast souls appeared behind him. Three-headed lava hound, scorching hell. As his voice sounded, the entire space that was wrapped in golden light suddenly turned dark red. An endless scorching hell was born. Lava surged and flames rolled. It turned into a scorching world. Meteor fall. As the scorching hell took shape, Ling Xiao immediately released the meteor. A huge meteor with a diameter of more than 10 meters fell from the sky, wreaking havoc in the scorching hell. Those beasts that charged at Ling Xiao were smashed to death by the terrifying meteor and burned to death by the terrifying flames. Purple lightning, thunder, bull beast soul, earthquake. In the scorching hell, the earth suddenly shook, and those agile beasts were all dizzy. In an instant, they were swallowed by the lava and fire dragons. Do you still want to continue? Ling Xiao looked at the sunbird coldly. He was just giving the other party a show of strength. His real combat power had not burst out yet. The sunbird let out a sharp cry. Then it grew bigger with the wind and instantly turned into a huge golden bird. Its body, when stretched out, was more than 10 meters long. This should be the sunbird's original form. Looks like you're stubborn. Ling Xiao sneered and did not talk nonsense. 9 snake poison region, black poison of death. The terrifying lava and meteors were already enough to frighten the beast horde. At this time, the black poison began to spread in the scorching hell. Everywhere it passed, not a single blade of grass was left alive. Countless beasts fell to the ground and melted into a pile of black blood. This was war, whether it was a war between humans or a war between humans and beasts. Finally, the beasts began to realize that the human in front of them had terrifying strength that was not inferior to the sunbird. They began to fear and began to flee. Ling Xiao did not chase after those beasts that fled. There was no need. He only killed those beasts that attacked him. It was easy to understand why those beasts fled. They were willing to fight for the sunbird because the sunbird was strong enough to pressure them to fight. Chapter 3250. Die, fugitives! The sunbird was far more domineering and merciless than anyone could have imagined. Under the blazing golden light, those fleeing demonic beasts were completely melted in an instant. What's the point? If you want to fight, how about one-on-one? They won't be able to help you. Ling Xiao looked at the sunbird. Shut up, human! By this point, the sunbird hated Ling Xiao to the bone. It had been the overlord of the sun sea for many years, and no human had ever dared to challenge it. But Ling Xiao was here. Furthermore, this human had an aura that even the sunbird feared. It was an aura that only the king of beast gods from the Black Tortoise continent could possess. The sunbird was very irritated and wanted to kill this human as quickly as possible. And yet, a horde of 100,000 demonlings was completely powerless against this human. The sunbird grew even more restless. Shut up, huh? Seems like there's no room for negotiation. Fine, let's fight. Ling Xiao wasn't in the mood to kill demonlings who posed no threat to him. He spread the wings on his back, broke through the air, and flew towards the sunbird. Whether it was fighting on the ground or in the air, he wasn't afraid of this opponent. With the sword light steps and the body of cosmic light, he moved with terrifying speed. In the blink of an eye, he was right in front of the sunbird, completely evading the demonlings. Ever since he had broken through to the third stratum of the life-seizing level, he was 10 times as fast as before. The sunbird could never have guessed that Ling Xiao would be so fast. However, it was still a demonling in the 5th stratum of the life-seizing level. As it faced Ling Xiao, its body erupted with dazzling golden light, which transformed into a blazing shield. Ling Xiao pulled out the revered ice sword and stabbed it forward. In order to increase his speed, he didn't use any martial techniques. Even so, his ordinary attack was equivalent to a medium general realm martial arts technique at the advanced level. Combined with the revered ice sword, he had reached the great circle of a mid-general class martial technique. Swish! The terrifying sword tore through the scorching space and stabbed directly into the sunbird's protective membrane. Break! With a furious roar, the Ice Supreme Sword released an eerie cold air that froze a part of the protective barrier. In an instant, cracks appeared on the barrier. What? The sunbird was shocked to see that its defense was in danger. Its defense had once been flawless against the strongest expert of the Sword Dynasty, Dugubajian. Dugubajian spent 2 hours, but was still unable to break through its defense. After that, he never came to the Sun Ocean again. But what was going on with this young man? Why was his attack so terrifying? Moreover, it was just an ordinary sword strike. Boom! The sunbird was sent flying, or rather, it had deliberately retreated on its own accord. Because he realized that the defensive barrier could not withstand Ling Xiao's attack, he was prepared to retreat in order to advance. The moment it retreated, the golden light on the sunbird's body became even more intense. It let out a loud and clear cry. The dignity of the Sun Emperor is inviolable. No matter who you are, you must die. Wrapped in terrifying power, the sunbird no longer retreated, but took the initiative to attack. Demonic beasts were demonic beasts, after all. They were born with superior physical conditions compared to humans. Of course, that was only relative to ordinary people. Ling Xiao possessed the king-tier divine body of the black tortoise and had many defensive skills. How could he possibly fear a mere demonling? 5 ghost secret magic, rock devil. The rock devil appeared, but the sunbird smashed it with its claws. Because of that, the sunbird's attack power was significantly reduced. Ling Xiao stabbed out with his sword, forcing the sunbird to retreat again. The surrounding demonlings didn't move, and simply watched the terrifying battle play out. The fact that two 5th Division Life Seizers were fighting each other was simply too shocking for their beastly hearts to handle. Not bad, Yang Qi thought. You live up to your reputation as a 5th Division Life Sizer. Looks like you're a lot stronger than that devil dragon puppet. But if you want to kill me, you won't be able to do it so easily. A look of disdain appeared on Ling Xiao's face. The sunbird had transformed into a monster that was more than 10 meters tall, and Yang Qi himself was only about 180 centimeters tall. In comparison, for him to block the sunbird's attack was like a mantis blocking a horse carriage. That kind of feeling was extremely frightening. Because of that, both the sunbird and the other demonlings realized how terrifying Ling Xiao was. The sunbird was furious. Gradually, its body began to change. It turned into a young man in a golden robe. He had a full head of golden hair, and even his eyes were golden. You transformed into a human to fight, Ling Xiao said, frowning. As far as he knew, demonlings who transformed into human form would have their fighting prowess greatly reduced. What was this sunbird doing? Was there something wrong with its head? You must be confused, the sunbird said. Why am I in human form? Well, you'll find out soon enough. Staring coldly at Ling Xiao, the sunbird continued. You're the first human to force me to use my human form. From the sound of it, it seemed that in human form, not only would its fighting prowess not decrease, it would actually increase. Ling Xiao didn't quite understand, but he was still on guard. Whoosh! All of a sudden, the golden-robed young man pounced on Ling Xiao. In an instant, he caught up with Ling Xiao's sword light steps and cosmic light body. A movement technique! Ling Xiao had his Tai Chi eye open, so he immediately understood what was going on. After the sunbird transformed into human form, not only did it maintain the tough body of a demonling, but it also learned how to use martial arts. It was no wonder that its speed would soar. But at this moment, he didn't have time to think. He hurriedly used sword light steps to dodge and brandished the Ice Supreme sword to block the opponent's attack. In terms of speed, he no longer had an advantage, so he could only fight head-on. Solar Fist! The golden-robed young man roared and suddenly threw a punch at Ling Xiao. The glaring golden light made it impossible for Ling Xiao to see anything clearly. And the most terrifying thing was that the Solar Fist not only had this special ability, but it could also attack with blazing heat. Ling Xiao had no choice but to put away the Ice Supreme sword. Vajra Ape, Invincible Vajra. Since he couldn't see his opponent clearly, he could only rely on his invincible Vajra to take the blow. Ling Xiao was sent flying backward, where he slammed into the ground, creating a huge crater. Bam! Before the golden-robed young man could follow up with another attack, a rumbling sound could be heard from the crater. Ling Xiao had been sent flying out of the crater. Blood oozed out of the corners of his mouth, but an excited smile could be seen on his face. Ever since he had reached the 3rd division of life seizing, very few people in the Sword Dynasty had been able to increase his cultivation base. Although the blow he had just taken had only increased his cultivation base by 10%, it was still enough. All he needed to do was move. That meant that the sunbird had been of great help to his cultivation base. Chapter 3251. Interesting. I never would have guessed that demonlings in human form would be so strong. This is going to be fun. Ling Xiao looked at the golden young man in front of him with incomparable excitement. Are you stupid? You won't be so happy soon. Puny human. The golden young man looked coldly at Ling Xiao, then once again charged at Ling Xiao. Once again he used the Solar Fist. However, the same move was naturally meaningless in front of Ling Xiao. One man and one beast fought fiercely in midair. They fought back and forth, and the situation of the battle was extremely intense. They fought to the point the heavens and the earth were practically cast into darkness, and the sun and moon were cast into a shadow. Ling Xiao felt a bit lucky. If he hadn't broken through to the third stratum of the life-seizing level, he probably wouldn't have been able to stand up to this golden young man. If that had happened, he would have had to trouble Little Gold to fight. Unfortunately, Little Gold's fighting prowess was only on par with the golden young man's. Even if he didn't lose, it wouldn't be easy for him to win. In the end, both sides would be seriously injured. Golden Dragon Seal. Although it was fun to keep fighting, Ling Xiao knew that if things went on like this, he wouldn't be able to defeat his opponent. He didn't want to waste any more time here. Therefore, he decided to use his most powerful move. The Golden Dragon roared, and in the blink of an eye, it was directly in front of the golden young man. As soon as the Golden Dragon Seal appeared, the golden young man began to panic. The battle had been evenly matched, but now the balance was tipping. However, the golden young man's panic wasn't enough to completely defeat him. Apparently, he hadn't used all of his power yet. Light of extermination! The golden young man roared. Suddenly, a dazzling beam of golden light shot out from his forehead. The destructive power of the light was so terrifying that it seemed even more terrifying than the Golden Dragon Seal. Ruyuombo, the light of extermination and the Golden Dragon Seal slammed into each other. After a moment of deadlock, the Golden Dragon Seal finally collapsed. However, the light of extermination hadn't completely disappeared. Instead, it focused on Ling Xiao, leaving a wound on Ling Xiao's body. Good heavens! Although this injury is nothing serious, I'm afraid this light of extinction is equivalent to a high-level general realm martial technique at the consummation level. My Golden Dragon Seal is only at the mastery level. Ling Xiao touched the charred wound. This guy's light of extinction was really similar to Xiao Jin's 9 Nether Yellow Springs Golden Light. Although it was much weaker, its power was definitely not to be underestimated. At this moment, Ling Xiao no longer dared to underestimate this golden youth. However, just because he didn't dare to underestimate them didn't mean he was afraid. After all, the golden boy was a demonling in human form. Although he was a 5th stratum demonling, he wasn't as intelligent as a human. Even the light of extinction was unable to take down Ling Xiao. This caused his originally strong confidence to be damaged, and he finally began to feel some fear. Die, human! His voice suddenly became hoarse. It actually transformed back into the form of a sunbird. Golden light continued to gather around his body. Ling Xiao could tell that the golden light was the same as the golden light of extinction that the golden youth had used before. However, it was much stronger in terms of both scale and power. Most likely, it was close to the level of a high-level general-class martial technique. Boss, let me deal with this golden light. It seems to taste pretty good. Xiao Jin seemed eager to try it out. You might be able to consume light and heat, but this thing is too strong. Even if you do, you'll still get hurt. Let me help you weaken it first. Ling Xiao chuckled. But boss, Xiao Jin said, you just want to use this light of extinction to improve your cultivation base, right? After spending so much time with Ling Xiao, Xiao Jin naturally understood what Ling Xiao was really thinking. So, you figured it out? Don't worry. The golden light of extinction is yours. Although it's not as strong as the 9 Nether Yellow Springs golden light, it's not weak either. Most importantly, it has more. Your 9 Nether Yellow Springs golden light isn't even strong enough to deal with an expert. As he spoke, Ling Xiao began to prepare his attack. It was the same Golden Dragon Seal, but this time it was in the Great Circle. After fighting the Golden Youth, the Golden Dragon Seal had reached a higher level. It just so happened that it came in handy. The golden light of extinction continued to condense on the sun bird's body. The air was filled with a terrifying pressure. This pressure made the monsters in the surroundings begin to flee. They could feel the horror of the golden light most directly. They knew that if they stayed here, they would probably die. Ling Xiao naturally had this feeling as well, but he was not afraid at all. Boom! Finally, the golden light gushed out from the sun bird's body. It turned into a blazing sun in the void. The golden sun radiated light in all directions. A terrifying power was brewing in the blazing sun. Is this the full version of the golden light of extinction? It's so strong. But my golden dragon seal isn't weak either. Ling Xiao sneered and released his golden dragon seal at the same time. The golden dragon soared into the sky, full of the majesty of a divine beast. Half the sky was dyed golden. The monsters were even more terrified. They could understand that the Sun Emperor had such a powerful attack, but they could not understand why a human could have such a powerful attack. Regardless of whether or not they understood, the terrifying golden dragon and the blazing sun had already collided. Both were golden, and both were incomparably hot. Both were incredibly powerful. As of this moment, the entire sun sea was much brighter than before. A huge mushroom cloud rose up from the island, causing the martial artists in the distance to tremble in fear. I wonder which lunatic provoked the sunbird. Is he looking to die? Humph. There are always people in this world who don't know what's good for them. Considering the battle prowess of that sunbird, even a 6th stratum life-sizer would have to be careful. It's good that he's dead. At least we'll have one less competitor when it comes to fighting for the God-Devil medallions. No one wanted to see what was happening in Sun City. Everyone knew that the sunbird had a bad temper. It was better to just stay on the island and wait for the tea party of gods and devils to begin. Meanwhile, back on Sun Island, the golden dragon and the blazing sun were fighting each other. Moments ago, they had been evenly matched. But now, Little Gold couldn't hold back any longer. He flew out of the spirit beast ring, opened his mouth, and sucked in all of the golden light. It wasn't just the golden light of extinction, but also the golden dragon seal. A moment later, the sky was clear again. The sunbird was completely flabbergasted. Not only had his most powerful attack failed to kill the human, it had actually been devoured by a bird that looked very much like him. What exactly was going on? The sunbird couldn't wrap its head around what was happening. As for the fleeing demonlings, they were so frightened that they didn't dare to move. What had just happened was simply too shocking. Chapter 3252. As one of the combatants, the sunbird was the most shocked of all. In that moment, it was completely flabbergasted. It was this momentary daze that gave Ling Xiao an opportunity. Flying up into the air, he stabbed out with the revered ice sword, sending the ghost king Hegemon's sword stabbing into the sunbird's throat. At this point in the battle, Ling Xiao wasn't going to take pity on a demonling. At the beginning, he probably wouldn't have tried to kill the sunbird. But the two of them had been locked in a deadly battle for most of the day. If he didn't kill the sunbird, would he just be waiting to be killed? Unfortunately, the sunbird had a tenacious life force. Despite having its throat pierced by the revered ice sword, it didn't die. Pulling its neck out of the sword, it turned and fled. Unfortunately for it, Ling Xiao wasn't going to give it that chance. Ice Frost WYRM Beast Soul, Frigid Ice Dragon Breath. In midair, Ling Xiao opened his mouth and spat out a dense ice dragon breath. Although it couldn't freeze the sunbird, it instantly slowed down the sunbird's speed. Bloodthirsty plague. Ling Xiao didn't feel at ease, so he unleashed another divine ability, the bloodthirsty plague. As his cultivation base increased, the power of the bloodthirsty plague increased. Even powerful demonlings in the 5th stratum of the life-seizing level were terrified by the bloodthirsty plague. They were already injured, and the bloodthirsty plague was causing their fighting prowess to drop. By this point, Ling Xiao couldn't be bothered to bully opponents who couldn't get his blood pumping. He gave orders to Little Gold. Of course, Little Gold didn't hold back. Instead, it leapt forward, its sharp claws tearing into the sunbird's body. Blood and feathers rained down from the sky. After killing the sunbird, Little Gold retrieved the demonling's core and swallowed it. Flying back into the beast ring, it said, "Boss, I'm afraid nobody in the Sword Dynasty is a match for you. I need to go work on my cultivation. The primeval god Necropolis is the key. Are you okay with that?" "Of course not." Ling Xiao nodded. After all, the only person in the Sword Dynasty who could pose a threat to him was Dugu Kanjing. However, even if it was Dugu Kanjing with his current strength, there was no need for him to fear him. He was merely unable to defeat him for the time being. At this moment, countless demonic beasts were crawling around Ling Xiao. Although the sunbird was killed by Xiao Jin, it was defeated by Ling Xiao. Therefore, in the hearts of these demon beasts, Ling Xiao was naturally the strongest existence. They had once regarded the sunbird as the emperor of the sun. Now that the sunbird had been killed, they were naturally willing to submit to Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao naturally would not let go of such a powerful force. Now that he wanted to unify the Sword Dynasty, he needed a lot of combat power. These demonic beasts would definitely be of great help. All right, all of you go and cultivate. When I need you, I'll naturally come and find you. He waved his hand, indicating for the demonic beasts to leave, while he entered the Sun City, ruins alone. His goal for coming here was to enter the ruins, but since the sunbird insisted on fighting him to the death, he had no choice but to fight. After killing the sunbird, no one would come and disturb him, right? After activating his Taiji Eye, Ling Xiao scanned his surroundings, including the underground. There were no ruins underground. It seemed like the Sun City had really sunk to the bottom of the sea, or perhaps it had been completely destroyed. However, although he did not find any ruins, Ling Xiao could not help but pay attention to the sun sculpture. The reason he paid attention to it was because his Taiji Eye was actually unable to see through the sun sculpture. Furthermore, the other buildings had been destroyed, but the sun sculpture still existed here. It had not been destroyed by the sunbird, so there had to be some secret. He approached the sun sculpture and indeed discovered that there were special inscriptions on the sculpture. Furthermore, the inscriptions were very tightly integrated. This is completely a work of art. No wonder it has stood tall for thousands of years. What exactly is this thing for, Master? Ling Xiao still lacked some knowledge after all. Most importantly, he was still too young. However, there was nothing to be afraid of with a Yuan Venerate around. It should be a martial technique library, a place similar to a library. The Yuan Venerate answered, Martial technique library. Library? But this thing is not considered big. How many things can it hide? Ling Xiao asked, Have you forgotten about the small realm? There should be a small realm inside this sun sculpture. The number of martial techniques stored inside is probably not much less than the sacred sword hall. The Yuan Venerate chuckled. That's right. Master, do you have a way to open it? Of course. Who am I? I am the most powerful array formation master in the entire mystic realm. Although the Yuan Venerate's strength could not be compared to his past self, he was very confident when it came to array formations. There was no array formation in this world that he could not break. Then I'll have to trouble you, Master. Ling Xiao smiled and released the Yuan Venerate's spiritual body while he wandered around nearby to see if there was anything else. After wandering around for a while, he actually found the place where the sunbird had hidden its treasures. The treasures hidden, there were at least hundreds of millions of spirit stones. Furthermore, most of them were middle-grade spirit stones. Ling Xiao really needed money if he wanted to unify the Sword Dynasty or even the 9 Supremes. Spirit stones were not only a universal currency, but they were also crucial for cultivation, array formation, and alchemy. Naturally, he would not miss out on these things. He directly put them away in the Mountain River realm, as the capacity of his storage ring was not big enough to hold them all. By the time he put these treasures away, the Yuan Venerate had already deciphered the martial technique library of the Sun City. Ling Xiao could not wait to open the martial technique library. Indeed, as the Yuan Venerate had said, there was a small realm inside. The martial technique library could be described as a massive volume. However, after using his Taiji Eye to check, he found that most of the martial techniques here were below the high-level general level. These things could be used to enrich the martial technique library of the Heavenly Dynasty Empire in the future. Ling Xiao put all of them away in the Mountain River realm. However, there was one martial technique that he had kept for himself. Although it was called a martial technique, it was actually a piece of memory metal. There were no words on it. This thing required one to have a strong comprehension ability to comprehend the martial technique within. However, according to the Yuan Venerate, this kind of memory metal usually sealed peak general level martial techniques. A peak general level martial technique that was even more powerful than a high-level general level martial technique, like the Golden Dragon Mark. What exactly will it be? Ling Xiao was looking forward to it. Then he took the memory metal and sat down beside the sun sculpture to comprehend it. There were still 2 days before the Divine Demon Tea Party, so he was not in a hurry. He just needed to comprehend this martial technique in these 2 days. Then his strength would increase by another level. After all, a peak general level martial technique was much more powerful than a high-level general level martial technique. Even if it was only at the small success stage, its power was comparable to a high-level general level martial technique at the great perfection stage. He did not have to worry about being disturbed here, as he had already become the new Sun Emperor, the Sun Emperor that was feared and obeyed by those demonic beasts. Chapter 3253. Time passed the easiest when comprehending martial arts. Ling Xiao's comprehension ability was extremely high to begin with. With the existence of the Tai Chi Eye, he could comprehend almost all the martial arts in the world. Although the things in this memory metal were brilliant, they were only peak general level martial arts. Naturally, there was no exception. About an hour later, Ling Xiao's eyes suddenly opened. There seemed to be a figure flashing in those eyes. Ling Xiao's eyes did not move, but his mind kept replaying the movements of that figure. Over and over again, the cycle repeated. Ling Xiao read it once, and had basically memorized it all. The second time, he had already comprehended the essence of this set of martial arts. On the third time, he finally comprehended it. Annihilation Divine Sword. This was the martial arts technique that Ling Xiao had comprehended. Presumably, the sunbird's Annihilation Divine Light should have been influenced by this sun sculpture. Although the martial arts techniques were different, the source of comprehension was the same. However, Ling Xiao's comprehension ability was higher. In addition, he had directly come into contact with the memory metal, so the sword technique he comprehended was a level higher than the sunbird's. Of course, comprehension was only the beginning. After comprehending it successfully, he still needed to cultivate and verify it. He needed to continue perfecting the Annihilation Divine Sword in actual combat. He closed his eyes again. A space was opened up in the mountain river world. His primordial spirit flew in and began to hone his sword technique. As the Annihilation Divine Sword was used, the entire space became incomparably hot, and not a single blade of grass grew. The originally ordinary environment seemed to have turned into the surface of the sun. Terrifying heat continued to seep out from the ground, and the solar storm blew wildly. This was even more terrifying than hell. The soil under his feet was almost all boiling magma, but the temperature of the magma was even higher than the scorching hell. Any creature that was born here would die in an instant. Annihilation Divine Sword. As expected of the Annihilation Divine Sword, this was a terrifying sword technique that could annihilate everything. Coupled with the Annihilation Sword intent, it was simply terrifying. It's about time. Ling Xiao opened his eyes again. The training in the mountain river world was just an illusion after all. He soared into the air and found a deserted island in the Sun Sea. The scenery on the island was beautiful. There were plants everywhere, but there were very few demonic beasts. There were no humans at all. Listen to my command. All demonic beasts, retreat from this island. At his command, the few demonic beasts on the island fled and migrated to other islands. Ling Xiao then took out the Sky Demon Sword. Taking a deep breath, the sword in Zhang Xian's mind flickered, and the sword in his hand glowed brightly. Then he stabbed down with his sword. At that moment, the light of extermination flickered. The huge sword shadow fell directly onto the deserted island. When the smoke and dust had completely dissipated, Ling Xiao was shocked. All the demonic beasts were trembling. They saw that the barren island that was originally full of life had turned into hell. Although the island was not destroyed, all the vegetation on the island had died. Boiling lava was constantly spewing out from the ground. The entire island was like a land of extinction. So this is the Annihilation Sword? The power was actually so terrifying. And this was only at the small success level. Annihilate everything, destroy everything. Such a tyrannical sword technique. I wonder how strong the warriors of Sun City were in the past. Ling Xiao was extremely emotional. Under the sword, all life was completely wiped out and replaced by a terrifying land that was like the surface of the sun. It was absolutely impossible for any living creature to survive there. Even the fire element would be torn apart by this terrifying, destructive sword intent. A peak-level general realm martial arts technique is indeed powerful. And if I'm not wrong, if I use this Annihilation Sword in my hands, combined with the destructive sword intent and the power of the powerful heavenly fire, it's probably close to the power of a beginner king realm martial arts technique. Ling Xiao was secretly delighted. Fortunately, he had come to this place out of boredom. Otherwise, how could he have obtained such a divine skill? Although the Golden Dragon Seal was powerful, it was only an advanced general realm martial arts technique. Now that he had failed to obtain the 9 Supremacy Sword technique, for Ling Xiao, the Annihilation Sword had become his most powerful martial arts technique in the Archean Divine Tomb. In the near future, the Tea of Fiend Gods and Demons was about to begin, and he had to compete for the Fiend Gods token. The Annihilation Sword could also greatly increase his combat power and create opportunities for him to obtain the Fiend Gods token. After all, he would not only have to face Degu Kanjing and Morong Qi at the Tea of Fiend Gods and Demons, but also experts from other forces. Degu Kanjing, your attempt to kill me and Xiao Jin outside Sword God City failed. That was your biggest failure. Now that I've obtained the Annihilation Sword, I'm not inferior to you in terms of martial arts techniques. Can you still kill me? Ling Xiao sneered. When Degu Kanjing used the Golden Dragon Seal to kill Xiangshan, Ling Xiao thought that the Golden Dragon Seal was the most powerful martial arts technique in the Sword Dynasty. Therefore, after obtaining the Golden Dragon Seal from eunuch Gao, he hurriedly cultivated it. But today he saw that the Annihilation Sword was much more powerful than the Golden Dragon Seal. It could definitely become one of his trump cards. There's still time. Continue to cultivate. Since Ling Xiao had obtained the Annihilation Sword, he wanted to cultivate it to become even more powerful. Therefore, in the next 2 days, he almost traversed the entire Sun Ocean and used those demonic beasts that dared to disobey him to practice his sword. The Annihilation Sword's power became even more ferocious as it was upgraded from the initial stage to the phenomenal stage. Little Gold was still cultivating. Clearly, the power of the Sunbird wasn't the least bit inferior to that of the artificial sun. Ling Xiao estimated that by the end of this cultivation session, Little Gold would be a 6-stage 1-star life-sizer. At that time, he would be able to go to the primeval god Necropolis to help him even more. And once Little Gold broke through, Degu Kanjing wouldn't be able to do anything. Therefore, Ling Xiao would definitely not disturb Xiao Jin if he could. Otherwise, it would be a waste of the Sunbird's demonic beast core. An hour before the Tea of Gods and Devils, Ling Xiao headed toward the island where the tea party would be held. Master, I'm not the only beast god on the Black Tortoise continent, right? Ling Xiao asked curiously. After his recent cultivation session, he understood how powerful beast god martial artists were. Right now, he only had the Sun God Beast Soul, the Ox God Beast Soul, and the incomplete Yu God Beast Soul. That didn't rule out the possibility that other martial artists had the souls of other beast gods. After all, the Black Tortoise continent was huge, and there were many geniuses. Indeed, you're not the only one. In fact, when I passed by the Black Tortoise continent, I encountered beast god martial artists. However, there are only 12 beast god souls in total, so the number of beast god martial artists is naturally not many. The Yuan Venerate thought for a moment before saying, "Your top priority now is to explore the potential of the beast god soul and search for other beast god souls. This will not only reduce the number of competitors, but also make you stronger. There shouldn't be any beast god souls in the Western region. If there were, I should be able to sense them. However, the god beast soul has been very active recently, so I suspect that its remnant soul might be in the primeval god necropolis." Chapter 3254. Your judgment should be correct. It is said that beast god martialists can sense the existence of other beast god souls, unless the beast god soul has already been obtained by another martialist. This should be correct, and it will be of great help to you in searching for other beast god souls in the future. The Yuan Venerate nodded. "It seems like you have to go to the immemorial divine tomb this time. The undying soul represents the time nomological laws of the Black Tortoise continent. If you obtain the complete undying soul, I'm afraid you'll have a more terrifying ability than life reversal. However, I feel that the remnant soul of the undying soul is only a part. It's not complete." Ling Xiao sighed. "Don't be greedy. It's already very difficult to obtain the sun god beast soul and the ox god beast soul. You have to know that very few people in this world have been able to obtain them." The Yuan Venerate smiled bitterly. "What's the matter? Let's take it step by step. I suspect that the reason the undying soul is incomplete is very likely because it is too powerful and has been deliberately divided into many parts. What kind of person would have such a terrifying ability that even the undying soul is no match for him?" Ling Xiao asked in surprise. "You are wrong. The undying soul is considered a top martialist in the Black Tortoise continent, second only to the sun god. However, don't forget that the Black Tortoise continent isn't the only continent in the mystic world. I have been to the Black Tortoise continent before, so I can't rule out the possibility that martialists from other continents have also come to the Black Tortoise continent." The Yuan Venerate reminded him. "Therefore, even if you obtain all the beast god souls, you must not be arrogant. Your greatest reliance is still the terrifying tyrannical sky martial soul. That is your foundation. The tyrannical sky martial soul is the most powerful martial soul in any continent in the mystic world." "I know." Ling Xiao nodded. "It's good that you know. Therefore, you should not expose your tyrannical sky martial soul easily. Possessing the beast god soul is enough for now. In the Black Tortoise continent, the beast god controlled 12 types of divine laws, although they were still affected by the King of Sovereigns. However, at least in the Black Tortoise continent, they were really powerful. Even foreign martialists would be affected by their laws if they came here, unless they were so strong that they could ignore the divine laws. I have a general understanding of the laws. It is a kind of rule set by the strong. Within a certain range, everything has to follow this rule. But what exactly are the laws controlled by the 12 beast gods?" Ling Xiao asked. "I can't answer you, but based on my recent observations, it's very likely that you're in control of the laws of combat. The child god abilities you've awakened include the earth-shaking golden light technique, the bloodthirsty plague, and the bloodthirsty rat demon. All of them are meant for battle. They can make you stronger and your enemies weaker. As for the divine ox beast soul, it hasn't awakened any supernatural powers yet, so I can't tell. As for the Yu god beast soul, it's very likely to be the time law." Yuan Venerate analyzed. "Law of combat. The laws of time." Ling Xiao took a deep breath. Although these two laws were only effective within the Black Tortoise continent, they were already very powerful. For Ling Xiao, this was definitely a very exciting thing. "We've arrived. I'll go and rest first." At that moment, Yuan Venerate's voice rang out again. Ling Xiao looked down and saw that they had indeed arrived at the island from before. Compared to 2 days ago, this place was clearly livelier. Ling Xiao didn't waste any more time. When he landed on the island, he actually discovered that a lively market had been set up temporarily. These people really knew how to do business. They knew that some tea party was going to be held here and brought their business to this place. Smiling, Luo Yinyang was about to head over to the venue when he saw Jian Fulong haggling with someone. He seemed to be in a good mood. Congratulations, Uncle Master. You finally recovered to the 5th level of the life-seizing realm. Ling Xiao smiled as he walked over to Jian Fulong. Your strength seems to have improved as well. I really don't know how you cultivate. Jian Fulong was originally quite pleased with himself. However, when he saw Ling Xiao, he was immediately discouraged. This kid was simply a monster. Every time they met, he seemed to see his strength improve. Although he hadn't broken through this time, he felt that his combat strength had increased by a lot. I'm fine. However, it seems like many martialists from other factions have come this time. Ling Xiao looked around. That's right. They're all in the 5th level of life-seizing. Even the weakest are in the 4th level. It's a good thing that the god and devil emissaries put some restrictions on them. Otherwise, considering the strength of the other 8, we wouldn't even be able to compete for the god-devil medallion. We might as well admit defeat. Jian Fulong sighed helplessly. To put it bluntly, the martialists from the other 8 factions who had come to the tea party of gods and devils were all trash. The truly strong ones had already obtained god-devil medallions from their own factions, so there was no need for them to come to the tea party of gods and devils. In other words, the people who came here weren't very impressive. Even as they were speaking, they heard a group of people talking nearby. The god and devil emissaries are really something else. Why do they have to hold this tea party of gods and devils? They know that the trash from the Sword Dynasty can't get their hands on it. Why do they have us come all the way here? We might not be the strongest in our own factions, but in the Sword Dynasty, which one of us isn't a top expert? How can this crappy place be called one of the 9 Supremes? It's so cheap. That's right. Any ordinary expert from the 8 Supremes could wipe out the Sword Dynasty with ease. Why don't we try to sit on the Emperor's throne and see how comfortable that is? Humph, you talk big. You're all trash from your own factions. You think you can throw your weight around in the Sword Dynasty? Haven't you heard? Mount Mammoth of the Myriad Kingdoms was destroyed by our new emperor. You people are just shooting your mouths off. Don't get yourselves in trouble. Perhaps it was because the words of these people were so offensive that some of the Sword Dynasty cultivators couldn't hold back any longer. Ling Xiao looked over at the person who had just spoken. His cultivation base wasn't weak. He was at the peak of the 3rd level of life-seizing. Unfortunately, compared to the cultivators of the other 8 forces, they were truly inferior. Whoa, someone actually dares to talk back to us? I'm Black Snake from the Black Snake sect. What's your name? One of the people who had been mocking the Sword Dynasty stepped forward, looking coldly at the 3rd level life-sizer. Xiao Yan from the Sword Dynasty. Black Snake sneered. So you're a pussy. I never would have guessed. But then again, you people from the Sword Dynasty really don't have any men. I can't believe you let a woman take the lead. What a joke. Black Snake chuckled coldly. Since you want to take the lead, fine. Let's have a little competition. If you can take 3 of my moves, I'll admit that I was talking big. Are you sure? Chapter 3255. Of course I'm sure. To deal with trash like you, 3 moves is already overestimating you. 1 move is enough. Hey, she looked at Xiao Yan with ridicule, with a proud look on his face. Sword Dynasty. Other than the new emperor, the rest are all trash. You'll know after we fight. Xiao Yan stood there and drew her sword. She circulated her true essence and prepared to block Black Snake's attack. Looking at your posture, you really don't need 1 move. Black Snake sneered. Without using a weapon, he took a step forward and reached out to grab Xiao Yan's neck. Xiao Yan waved her sword to block. However, Black Snake's hand was like a strange tentacle. It easily bypassed the long sword in Xiao Yan's hand and grabbed Xiao Yan's neck. Then he threw Xiao Yan out. Xiao Yan fell to the ground and vomited blood. She was clearly seriously injured. Trash. 3 moves is indeed overestimating you. You don't even need 1 move. Black Snake sneered. Hearing this and seeing Xiao Yan's appearance, many Sword Dynasty martial artists who were originally unconvinced immediately lowered their heads. What a joke! Was face more important than life? Among the experts of the Sword Dynasty, Xiao Yan's strength should be ranked in the top 20. Just like that, she was easily defeated. She didn't even use a martial technique. What could they do if they went up? They would just make a fool of themselves. However, the cowardice of the Sword Dynasty martial artists made the people from the Mystic Snake Demon sect even more proud. Other than Dugu Kanjing, the rest of the Sword Dynasty are a bunch of good-for-nothings. Black Snake repeated his words again. One of his companions laughed. Black Snake, I didn't expect that people like us who can't stand up in the Mystic Snake Demon sect can actually be in the limelight here. Just how much trash is the Sword Dynasty? Looks like we have the ability to fight for the Fiend God token. Ha ha ha, that's right. Compared to our Mystic Snake Demon sect, the Sword Dynasty martial artists shouldn't have come to the Fiend God tea party. It's simply a disgrace. I really don't know if they have any sense of shame. When Black Snake spoke, he deliberately raised his voice so that everyone here could hear. The Sword Dynasty martial artists were simply dealt a huge blow. They originally thought that since the Tea Party of the Gods and Devils was being held in the Sword Dynasty, they might be qualified to compete for the Gods and Devils token. But the official competition hadn't even started yet, and they were already making a fool of themselves here. It was really stifling in their hearts. Martial Uncle, are you going to do it, or should I? Ling Xiao was also a member of the Sword Dynasty, and so was Jian Fulong. Given his character, he would definitely not be able to take it lying down after being scolded as a piece of trash and being continuously provoked by others. I'll do it. Jian Fulong sneered. This old man has disappeared for over 200 years. To think that this group of grandsons would be so arrogant to this extent. All right then. Ling Xiao nodded. To deal with trash like the Black Snake, Jian Fulong was more than enough. And now that Jian Fulong was back in the 5th division of life seizing, he could easily crush the Black Snake. An old man? The Sword Dynasty has really declined. They actually need the old man to stand up for them. Thinking about it, the new emperor of the Sword Dynasty is also an old man. How boring. The Black Snake glanced at Jian Fulong, clearly not taking him seriously at all. I say, old man, that kid is with you, right? Don't say I didn't warn you. You guys should come at me together. If anyone else wants to fight back, they can all attack together. That way, we won't have to waste time at the Tea Party of Gods and Devils. The Black Snake's voice was filled with arrogance and arrogance. You think you have what it takes? Jian Fulong sneered. You haven't even grown out your hair yet. Today, I'll show you what it means to be strong. Are you looking to die, you old bastard? Black Snake was enraged. He extended his body and pounced out like an eagle, aiming for Jian Fulong. His hands were like venomous snakes, stabbing toward Jian Fulong's throat. It was obvious that he hadn't killed Xiao Yan earlier, but now he was trying to kill Jian Fulong. After all, Jian Fulong's attitude had pissed him off. Chuckling coldly, Jian Fulong didn't even bother using his sword. Instead, he reached out with his right hand to block. Bam! Both of them had focused their true energy on their attacks, so they hadn't thought much of it. But when they collided, a huge boom rang out, and a shockwave spread out. Many people dodged out of fear. Black Snake was sent flying by the impact. You keep saying that our Sword Dynasty's martial artists are trash, but I don't think you're anything special, Jian Fulong said in disdain. Old man, you do have some skills, but I didn't use my true strength just now to save you some face. It's not too late to admit defeat now. The Black Snake was shocked, but he refused to admit defeat. Moreover, he was looking forward to Jian Fulong using his full strength. If that was the case, he might have a chance to win. Black Snake, you can't even defeat an old man. Do you want us to help you? The Black Snake Demon sect's companions mocked. They knew that the black snake had held back his strength and was preparing to unleash his full strength at the tea party of gods and devils. But now, facing this old man, if the black snake didn't use his full strength, it would be hard to take him down. Don't worry, he's just an old man with one foot in the grave. The black snake laughed coldly. He knew that if he couldn't defeat Jian Fulong today, he would lose all face. Earlier, he had proudly declared that the Sword Dynasty's martial artists were trash. If he lost, wouldn't that mean he was worse than trash? Your mouth stinks. You can go die now. Jian Fulong had planned to play with the black snake a bit longer, but the black snake's mouth was full of obscenities. Jian Fulong couldn't take it anymore. He leaned forward, appearing in front of the black snake in the blink of an eye. Then, he struck the black snake's abdomen with his palm. The black snake flew back several hundred meters before coming to a stop. However, he couldn't get up. This scene caused the chattering disciples of the mystic snake sect to instantly shut their mouths. They had said that the Sword Dynasty was weak, but this strange old man had taught them a harsh lesson. That piece of trash black snake can't even defeat a martial artist of the same level. After a long moment, one of them cursed. No, he's not of the same level. This old man is a life-sizer. Let me do it. Another person stepped forward from the Black Snake Demon Sect. He wasn't very old, only in his early 20s. He was far stronger than the Black Snake. From what Ling Xiao could tell, he was stronger than Mammoth Mountain, although he was weaker than the Sunbird. He was weaker than Duga Kanjing. Young Master Silverscale, let me do it. You came to the tea party of gods and devils to have fun. You're different from us. You're a genius, and will definitely get stronger in the future. There's no need to squabble with an old man. Another person from the Black Snake Demon Sect said, Shut up. I said I'll do it. If you don't hear me, cut off your ears. They're useless anyway. Chapter 3256. Are you going to take turns fighting me? Forget it. The tea of gods and devils is about to begin. Why don't we all conserve some energy? Ling Xiao walked out and said to Yin Lin with a smile, Who are you? Yin Lin asked, frowning. He was convinced that anyone who dared to step forward at a time like this was no weakling. Ling Xiao from the Sword Dynasty. Ling Xiao said coolly, That's Ling Xiao. He's really famous these days. Many of the martial artists from the Sword Dynasty were looking at Ling Xiao with reverence. Obviously, they knew that Ling Xiao had killed Duga Xingjian and destroyed the Devil Dragon puppet. You're a famous guy, Yin Lin said. Unfortunately, your cultivation base is too weak. I'm not interested in fighting you. You old bastard, come on. Yin Lin seemed to look down on Ling Xiao as he said to Jian Fulong, If you can beat him, then you can come find me. Jian Fulong chuckled evilly. He had already defeated Black Snake and had vented his anger. There was no need to waste his true energy here. Ling Xiao was different. After all, Ling Xiao had so much true energy that he couldn't possibly use it all up. You guys kill him. Yin Lin said to the martial artists from the Mystic Snake Sect, not even bothering to look at Ling Xiao. Yes, sir. In addition to Yin Lin and Black Snake, there were 5 other people from the Mystic Snake Sect, all of whom were in the 4th stage of life seizing. They were strong, but sadly, Ling Xiao didn't care about them at all. In the face of their attacks, Ling Xiao simply smiled coldly. He didn't even bother to draw his sword or swing his fist. All he did was wave his hand casually. A terrifying beam of sword light tore through the ground and shot toward the 5 martial artists. A moment later, a meter-wide gash appeared in the ground. Even more terrifying was that the sword energy hit all 5 of them at the same time, sending them flying backward with blood pouring out of their bodies. Shockingly, the wounds were all on their mouths. At this moment, none of them could open their mouths to speak. So strong! Was this young man really a warrior from the Sword Dynasty? He didn't even use a sword. He defeated 5 4th Division Life Seizers with a wave of his hand. There were quite a number of martial artists from the other 8 forces in the temporary market. although they had all failed in the fight for the god and devil token in their respective forces. There was no doubt that each and every one of them was one of the top experts in the Sword Dynasty. But even so, Ling Xiao's attack still stunned them. Those 5 people's strength were all not weaker than Black Snake, but they were actually defeated so thoroughly. Yin Lin's expression was a little ugly, but he was also a little surprised. Those 5 people were all his subordinates, including Black Snake. Even if it was him, it would be impossible for him to defeat 5 of them at the same time. What was going on with this young man? When did such a terrifying genius appear in the Sword Dynasty? Yin Lin's expression turned ugly. Only now did he understand what was going on. Compared to Jian Fulong, this young man was even more terrifying. Apologize. Ling Xiao's voice suddenly rang out. Then you can scram. Apologize? In response, Yin Lin's expression changed from one of panic to one of determination. He couldn't apologize. Although his cultivation base was only in the 5th division of life seizing, he had a very high status in the profound snake sect. How could he possibly apologize to a lowly commoner from the Sword Dynasty? How could he possibly have the face to go back? Therefore, despite his fear, he had no choice but to grit his teeth and endure. He had planted the bitter fruit, and he had to eat it himself. He had put on a show, and he had to see it through, even if he had to cry. You can't apologize, Yin Lin said loudly. However, I have to admit that my subordinates were being unfair. Not everyone in the Sword Dynasty is trash. At the very least, there are a few people who are worthy of respect. If you don't want to apologize, fine. But if you can even touch the hem of my robe, I'll take back my words and let you leave. Ling Xiao chuckled coldly. There was no point in simply defeating them. He wanted them to fall into complete despair. Then they would scram back to the Profound Snake sect in despair. He already had a feud with the Profound Snake sect. Now that they dared to insult him, he would settle old and new grudges with them. There was no way he would show them any mercy. You said it yourself. Don't look down on me. Yin Lin felt insulted. Although he knew he wasn't a match for Ling Xiao, he couldn't even touch the hem of his robe. If that wasn't an insult, then what was? Whoosh! Yin Lin's body flickered. A 3-headed snake, martial soul, appeared behind him. After that, his body and his martial soul split apart at the same time, turning into 3 real figures that approached Ling Xiao from 3 different directions. This was a special ability of his 3-headed snake martial soul. Since he was using it today, he wanted to make sure he could injure Ling Xiao. That way, he would be able to regain some face. In fact, he might even be able to take advantage of this opportunity to injure or even kill Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao stood there, then plucked 3 strands of hair from his head. After the 3 strands of hair were in his hand, they suddenly became stiff and straight, like 3 black iron needles. These 3 strands of hair are more than enough to deal with you. With that, he tossed the strands of hair out. The hair transformed into sharp sword energy that was no less powerful than the sword energy of a 5th division life-sizer. Yin Lin's face darkened. He couldn't believe his opponent was toying with him and looking down on him. He was instantly enraged. The 3 figures regrouped, and a terrifying power gushed out from his body. Then he thrust his hands out. This palm strike was definitely as powerful as a mid-general class martial technique. His intention was very clear. He wanted to destroy the 3 strands of hair and injure Ling Xiao while he was at it. However, Ling Xiao's hair wasn't that easy to deal with. Although they looked like mere strands of hair, they contained the will of the extermination, God's word that Ling Xiao had just gained enlightenment of. How could Yin Lin possibly be a match for it? Shockingly, the 3 strands of hair pierced right through Yin Lin's palm, and then slammed into him with unstoppable force, sending him flying backward. It was almost like, seeing this scene, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. This Ling Xiao was simply too strong. How could he defeat a 5th division life-sizer so easily? That was a bit too domineering. So that idiot Yin Lin is just SOSO. And here I thought he was going to be my biggest competitor. Who would have thought he'd be defeated by a martial artist from the Sword Dynasty? Said a man in a bright red robe embroidered with the image of a phoenix. With that he turned and left. Isn't that Hui Yuanzi from the Fire Dynasty? I can't believe he's here. Don't tell me he didn't get a God-Devil medallion from his faction? I wonder how strong the Fire Dynasty martial artists are. I have no idea. From what I can tell, Hui Yuanzi doesn't care about Yin Lin and Ling Xiao at all. Chapter 32:57. Apologize. Ling Xiao stepped on Yin Lin's body and said coldly, "Otherwise I'll kill you." Silver Scale gritted his teeth, clearly not willing to accept the outcome. After all, he had been defeated by Ling Xiao and hadn't been able to fight back at all. What else could he do other than apologize? Blood still dripping from his mouth, he said helplessly, "I was blind as a dog. I never would have guessed that the Sword Dynasty would have a genius like you. Ling Xiao, I'll remember you." "So what?" Yang Qi said. "You still want to cause trouble for me?" Ling Xiao stomped his foot down again. "Remember this. Get the hell out of the Sword Dynasty. If I see you again, I'll kill you. You. Don't go too far. I don't care who you are. Get the hell out of here." Ling Xiao sent Yin Lin flying with a kick. He didn't care if Yin Lin was dead or alive as he walked towards the venue. Do you guys think that Ling Xiao can compete with the other competitors? Seeing Ling Xiao leave, people couldn't help but discuss the matter. It depends on who he's competing with. He's strong, but he can't compare to Dugu Kanjing from the Sword Dynasty, Mammoth Mafe from the 10,000 Kingdoms, Ice Mountain from the Ice Dynasty, and Flame Sourcechild from the Fire Dynasty. That's true. Those people you mentioned are the ones who have the best chance of winning the God-Devil medallion. Let's get to the venue. It's almost time. They're probably screening people. What screening? Do you even need to ask? There are a lot of people here this time. If everyone is qualified to participate in the official tea party, it will take a few days and nights. It is simply impossible. Therefore, before the official tea party begins, there will be a small test. I am afraid that 90% of the warriors will be eliminated. Most of the people who knew about the tea party were martial artists who had arrived a few days earlier and had done their own research. At the entrance to the venue, the God-Devil emissaries had called in reinforcements from the 9 paragons. Just because they were temporary reinforcements didn't mean they weren't important. After all, they were 6-stage life seizers. In other words, all the warriors who came to participate in the tea party of gods and devils were no match for them. If even a few helpers were so terrifying, it was easy to imagine how powerful the god and devil envoys were. There was a bronze pillar at the entrance. The copper pillar was 100 meters tall, and every meter had a node. It was said that only martial artists with an attack power of 80 and above had the qualifications to become an official participant of the tea party. What does it mean to be above 80 meters? Someone asked. That means he's at least in the 5th division of life seizing. The 6th division, life sizer, standing next to the pillar, laughed coldly. What? Hearing this, many people immediately broke down. 5th division life seizing. What kind of joke was this? They hadn't said that before. If they had known earlier, they wouldn't have come and wasted their time. If you're a coward, then get lost. If you're willing to try, hurry up. Many people have already entered. The best result is even 90 meters. That expert mocked. All right, let me try, said a 4th division life sizer. He had come all the way here from another organization, and obviously couldn't accept going back. Therefore, he had to give it a try. Drawing on his true energy, he punched out. What he used was his most powerful martial skill. Rumbling sounds could be heard as a red line appeared on the pillar. 65 meters. The guardian said coldly, "Impossible. I'll try again." Clearly, the man wasn't convinced. "Screw off. You only get one chance. If you don't agree, you'll be killed." The guardian's cold gaze caused the man to jump in fright. Scrambling to his feet, the man fled. Next. the Guardian said coldly. In the following test, more than 100 people had tried it, but the best result was only 79 meters. They had almost passed, but if they didn't pass, they didn't pass. The Guardian didn't give them any face at all and directly chased them away. No way, the Guardian said. Is there really no one who can pass? The Guardian also found it strange. Previously, many people had passed, but until now, none of the later ones had passed. It was only natural that the Guardian would find it strange. Before long, it was Jian Fulong's turn. A martial artist from the Sword Dynasty? There's no need to try, is there? Other than Dugu Kanjing and Morong Qi, who else from the Sword Dynasty is qualified to participate? Ignoring the Guardian, Jian Fulong casually stabbed out with his sword. He didn't use his most powerful attack. 87 meters. The Guardian looked at Jian Fulong and was slightly shocked. Even those who are considered the strongest seeded contestants in the tea party only had a best result of 90 meters. This person was actually very close. Finally, someone passed. It seems there really is nothing wrong with the pillar. The other martial artists in line breathed sighs of relief. If the pillar had a problem, it would have been very depressing. Next, the Guardian said, feeling a bit embarrassed. However, Jian Fulong didn't say anything. After passing the test, he went to the other side to wait for Ling Xiao. 3rd Division life-sizer? Are you trying to be funny? When the Guardian saw Ling Xiao, his expression turned unsightly. I can't take the test. Ling Xiao said, looking at the Guardian calmly. You can take the test, but if you can pass, I'll call you Grandpa in front of everyone. The Guardian laughed. That's not necessary. Just remember, don't look down on others. Ling Xiao sneered and pointed out casually. 80 meters. It was neither high nor low, exactly 80 meters. However, the Guardian could sense that Ling Xiao wasn't using his full strength. He was just toying with him. However, he was the one who had caused this embarrassment, so he couldn't say anything. Besides, Ling Xiao had already given him a lot of face. If he didn't change the conditions and Ling Xiao passed, how could he call him Grandpa? Ling Xiao sneered, turned around, and stepped into the venue with Jian Fulong. At this moment, there were hundreds of people who had already taken their seats in the venue. This number was much more than he had imagined. Of those people, Ling Xiao only recognized Dugu Kanjing and Morong Qi. The two of them were sitting together, and it seemed they were trying to get the God Devil medallion. Seeing that it was almost time for the tea party, 2 figures flew over from the distance. One of them was a woman in white and emanated a holy aura. The other was a man in black and emanated an aura of death. The appearance of the two of them caused a huge stir in the venue. They didn't try to hide their strength, and their terrifying auras caused the entire island to tremble. Many people were already frightened by the auras of the God Devil emissaries. Chapter 3258. The Tea Party competition will be divided into 4 groups, which will be held simultaneously. Each group will determine the top 3. The final 12 will step onto the stage. Whoever emerges victorious will receive 3 God Devil medallions. The white-robed emissary's voice was cold. The rules were simple and clear, and everyone could hear them clearly. However, there were many who didn't understand. Aren't there 3 God Devil medallions? Why give them to one person? Isn't it good to be in the top 3? Someone asked directly. If you don't accept, then scram. The black-robed emissary said coldly. His attitude was very domineering. What the fuck? You really think I'm afraid of you bullshit emissaries? Well, I'm going to rip off your masks and see what you're made of. This man was a 5th Division life-sizer, so it was only natural for him to be arrogant. Although everyone had heard that the emissaries were powerful, no one had ever seen them in action. Whether or not that was true was hard to say. Today he was going to be the first to eat the crab. With that, he flew up into the air, arms outstretched, and shot toward the emissaries like an eagle. As he neared, a long spear appeared in his hand, which was infused with true energy and filled with the rumbling of thunder. This guy isn't weak. He's a lot stronger than the devil dragon puppet. Ling Xiao chuckled. Yeah, even I wouldn't be able to beat him easily. I'd probably need 300 or 400 moves. Jian Fulong nodded. Even as the words left their mouths, the black-garbed devil emissary shot to his feet and grabbed the spear of the 5th Division life-sizer. Then he took a step forward, and the ordinary Great Emperor armament was instantly crushed by his palm. At the same time, the emissary's hand grabbed the man's throat. Crack! Without the slightest hesitation, the man's neck was snapped and he died. Who else wants to try? The black-robed emissary said, chuckling coldly as he looked down at the crowd. No one said a word. His strength was truly too strong. With just his bare hands, he was actually able to destroy a common Great Emperor weapon. That was already frightening enough. Even more terrifying was the fact that he could kill a 5th Division life-sizer with a casual attack. What do you think? Jian Fulong asked Ling Xiao. Strong. Very strong. Unfathomable. Ling Xiao sighed and said, These two fellows are the most terrifying existences I have ever seen. But didn't you also defeat Silver Scale easily? Jian Fulong added. That's different. I suspect that even a 6th Division life-sizer would be easily killed by him. Those two are terrifying. No wonder they're martial artists from the other 4 domains. Ling Xiao frowned. The pressure in his heart instantly increased. Originally, he had been a little excited about the rapid breakthroughs in his cultivation and the rapid increase in his strength. He felt that he might be able to see Fanghua soon and take her back. However, the appearance of these two people was like a bucket of cold water poured over his head. He still had a long way to go. There were still many things to be done. Don't be discouraged. One day, you will be stronger than them. Ling Xiao clenched his fists and told himself, if he wanted to get stronger, he had to get the God Devil medallion. Otherwise, how could he enter the primeval God necropolis? The primeval God necropolis was his opportunity to get stronger. Since there's no one else, we'll split you into groups according to the number plates you received when you entered. Dugu Kanjing, Huyuanzi, Mammoth Mafe, Ice Mountain. You 4 are clearly stronger than the others. To avoid encountering each other early, we'll split you into 4 groups. Do you have any objections? The black-robed emissary asked. Of course, no one dared to say anything. Even if they did, they could only hold it in. The strength displayed by the black-clothed emissaries was truly too terrifying. No matter who it was, no one would be foolish enough to resist them at this moment. In order to make the competition even more exciting, we've decided to take out our savings as rewards. The top 3 in each group will receive a reward of 1 million, 5 million, and 10 million mid-grade spirit stones. As for the top 3 martial artists in the finals, they would be able to obtain a high-quality Emperor artifact as a reward. In addition to the God Devil medallion and high-quality Imperial item, the champion will also receive 100 heavenly tribulation pills. The white-robed emissary said coolly, I didn't expect there to be such benefits. Looks like we'll have to go all out. In the 9 Supremes, high-quality Imperial items are the best treasures. But let's not hope for that. As long as we can get into the top 3 and get some mid-grade spirit stones, we'll be satisfied. Amidst the excited discussions, the 200 people participating in the tea party competition were divided into 4 groups. There were 4 arenas set up in the venue, and the 4 battles would begin at the same time. In the first arena, Dugu Kanjing, the Emperor of Sword Dynasty, was the seeded contestant. In the second arena, Huyuanzi was the seeded contestant. In the third arena, Mammoth Mafe was the seeded contestant. In the fourth arena, Ice Mountain was the seeded contestant. These 4 were considered the strongest by the 2 emissaries. Although many people were not convinced, no one dared to question them. Ling Xiao was one of those who were not convinced, but he wouldn't say anything. As for who was stronger, it would be clear after the battle. He was assigned to the second arena. Similarly, Jian Fulong was also assigned to the second arena. Perhaps it was because their numbers were connected. Although there were 4 arenas, it was possible to watch the battles from the spectator seats. After all, the arenas weren't very far from each other. They were all in the middle of the venue. It almost seemed as if the 4 arenas had been split into 4 sections. How did the 2 emissaries manage to do that in such a short time? Among the 50 over martial artists in the second arena, the one with the lowest cultivation was naturally Ling Xiao. Most of the people present were in the 5th level of life seizing, and any one of them would be a major figure in the Sword Dynasty. In fact, without Digu Kanjing, the Sword Dynasty might very well have been the hegemon Sword Dynasty. Although the Black Snake Devil sect had looked down on the Sword Dynasty, they had to admit that the Sword Dynasty was weak. It was a fact that the Sword Dynasty was weak. Hua Yuanzi was the pinnacle of the second arena. He had an arrogant expression on his face and wore a bright red robe that made him look domineering and mighty. As he stood there, he looked like an emperor. Most of the people present didn't even dare to look him in the eye. However, there were a few people who were just a bit weaker than Hua Yuanzi and were definitely in the top 3 of the second arena. In addition to Ling Xiao and Jian Fulong, there were at least 3 other people who were as strong as Hua Yuanzi. Anyone who faced them would have a hard time. Of course, they didn't care about anyone else. Their goal was to challenge Hua Yuanzi and the other so-called strongest experts. Let the competition begin. Chapter 3259. In the first arena, Dugu Kanjing wore a yellow robe with a crown on his head. However, the gloomy death aura around him made him seem unapproachable. It was very terrifying. In the second arena, Hua Yuanzi wore a red robe. His aura exploded and raging flames rolled around his body. He did not even bother to hide his aura. He was even more domineering and powerful than before. In the third arena, Xiang Mafei released a terrifying aura that only ancient beasts could possess. He was not as domineering as Hua Yuanzi, but his aura was not any weaker than Hua Yuanzi's. The fourth arena was named Bingshan. Just like his name, he was as cold as a mountain. On the arena he was on, the cold air permeated the air. Even the ground of the arena was frozen. He didn't speak much, but he exuded a gloomy and cold aura. Below the arena, Morongqi looked at Bingshan. He seemed very nervous, but he could not hide his excitement. To him, all the martial artists from the imperial family of the Ice Dynasty were usurpers. Soon, the opponents of the 4 strongest contestants had also entered the arena. Dugu Kanjing sneered. He looked at his opponent and released a terrifying black aura. It turned into a black specter and instantly took over his opponent's body. In a short moment, his opponent's essence was sucked dry and he died on the spot. At the same time, the battles in the other 3 arenas also ended. Hua Yuanzi's opponent was burned into a pile of charcoal. He had died a miserable death. Hua Yuanzi is only using demonic fire. However, he seems to have cultivated some kind of secret technique that allows his demonic fire to erupt with power close to that of an exotic flame. Ling Xiao observed Hua Yuanzi more, mainly because he was also in the second arena. In the third arena, Xiang Mafei did not even use his dragonesque elephant martial soul. He used his physical strength alone to send his opponent flying out of the arena. His opponent fell to the ground and could not get up. As expected of a martial artist from the dragonesque elephant clan, his physical strength is simply amazing. This guy should be much stronger than Xiang Shan. Ling Xiao muttered to himself. The rest of the audience also exclaimed. In the fourth arena, Bing Shan's opponent could not climb up the arena at all. Because the arena had completely turned into ice, he could only give up gloomily. However, at least he managed to keep his life. He was much luckier than the other strongest contestants. Many people who originally had objections to the black-clothed demon envoy's judgment shut their mouths at this moment. The 4 most powerful experts really are the most powerful. They're terrifying. They're all in the 5th division of life seizing, but their opponents don't even stand a chance. That's right. I'm afraid these 4 people will become the contenders for the Fiend God token in the end. Others can forget about it. Hearing such discussions, Ling Xiao snorted disdainfully. He knew very well that, in the first battle, the four of them had not used their full strength at all. They had merely defeated their opponents, as if they were completing a mission. Of course, the 5th Division of Life Seizing had its limits. Ling Xiao believed that Dugu Kanjing was at his limit. No matter how strong the other 3 were, they would not surpass this limit, so there was no need for him to be afraid. After the end of the first battle, the enthusiasm of the audience was completely ignited. Although the following battle didn't end so quickly, the scene wasn't weak at all. It was just as exciting. After all, most of the people on the stage were 5th Division Life Seizers, and their cultivation bases were roughly equal. When they fought, it was naturally very exciting. Compared to the 4 most powerful experts, it was a completely different story. Before long, it was Jian Fulong's turn to fight. His performance was in no way inferior to that of the 4 most powerful experts. With a single kick, he sent his opponent flying. Jian Fulong's true strength was only slightly inferior to Dugu Kanjing's. After all, he was an old freak who had lived for hundreds of years. Now that he was back in the 5th Division of Life Seizing and had been nourished by Ling Xiao's medicine, his battle prowess was even greater than before. Jian Fulong's appearance caused the audience to erupt into cheers. After all, he was a martial artist from the Sword Dynasty. After all, other than Dugu Kanjing, all of the other Sword Dynasty martial artists who had appeared before him had been defeated in a single blow. After using the dragon subduing sword, Ling Xiao immediately left the stage. His opponent was a bewitching young woman. She had a bewitching look to her face. Not only did she have an excellent figure, but she also had a unique, enchanting air about her. As soon as she stepped onto the stage, the audience erupted into cheers, and even the martial artists from the other groups looked over. Hu Yuanzi's eyes lit up, as if he were very interested in this young woman. As Ling Xiao looked at her, what he saw wasn't her beauty or her bewitching charm, but rather her power. She was second only to the 4 most powerful experts, and was on the same level as Morongqi. In fact, if Jian Fulong were to fight her, he would probably only have a 50% chance of winning. Did you see that? That chick from the Dazzling Palace is really hot. Sure, keep your voice down. That's fox talk, the kind that consumes the quintessence energy of men. She's definitely in the top 10 of this year's Tea of Gods and Devils. Most terrifying of all is that she has a secret magic that makes it so that people can't move at all. If you're not careful, you'll fall for it. Haha, that kid isn't going to put on a classic action scene with her, is he? Jealous? Why don't you go? I don't have that kind of luck. If I get played to death, my girlfriend will be sad. No matter what, that kid is out of luck. Encountering Fox Talk might be even more of a headache than encountering Hu Yuanzi. The martial artists discussed animatedly. They all felt sad for Ling Xiao's fate, or were they gloating? Ling Xiao, be careful. That woman isn't simple. As an old monster who had lived for hundreds of years, Jian Fulong's eyesight wasn't bad. He could tell that Fox Talk wasn't simple. Moreover, none of the women from the Dazzling Palace were easy to deal with. But even so, he was still full of confidence in Ling Xiao. Although he didn't know what had happened on Sun Island, Jian Fulong believed that what had happened on Sun Island 2 days ago had been done by Ling Xiao. If he wasn't even afraid of the sunbird, how could a mere woman from the Dazzling Palace be his match? His only worry was that Ling Xiao would underestimate his opponent. At this moment, some of the martial artists from the Dazzling Palace were also chattering away. Haha, I've heard of this Ling Xiao. When he first came to the Sword Dynasty, everyone said that he was an absolute genius. If he can be considered a genius, then wouldn't our Dazzling Palace be filled with geniuses? That's right. Big sister Fox Talk. Finish him off in one move. Kid, why aren't you kowtowing and admitting defeat when you see our senior sister Fox Talk? This couldn't be considered teasing anymore. It was simply humiliation. Kowtow and admit defeat? All right. Then I'll get your big sister Fox Talk to kowtow and admit defeat. Ling Xiao hadn't forgotten what had happened on the White Tiger continent. Chapter 3260. On the sidelines, the crowd was still mocking Ling Xiao for being unlucky enough to encounter Hu Yan. In the arena, Ling Xiao had already launched an attack. He took the initiative and punched out, forcing Hu Yan to dodge with all her might. However, she still suffered a blow to her arm. At this moment, Hu Yan felt her entire arm go numb, as if she couldn't feel anything. However, she was still a martial artist from the Linglong Palace, second only to the 4 chosen by the black-robed devil emissary. She wasn't defeated in an instant, although her arm was numb. She wasn't someone who was good at close combat. Being further away was more suitable for her to fight. A fox with 9 tails appeared behind her. It seemed that her martial soul was a 9-tailed fox. The moment she released her martial soul, Hu Yan began to counterattack. Her 9 tails attacked Ling Xiao like 9 tentacles. The 2 of them exchanged more than 10 rounds in an instant on the second arena. From the beginning to the end, Ling Xiao didn't draw his sword. He fought with his bare hands. No matter what kind of attack Hu Yan launched, he could shatter it with a single punch. So strong! Seeing this scene, many people immediately shut their mouths. Ling Xiao's strength was far beyond their imagination. How could this kid, who was only in the 3rd level of life seizing, be so terrifying? Hu Yan also wanted to ask this question. As a disciple of the Linglong Palace, Hu Yan was actually very proud. Even in the Linglong Palace, she was nothing. However, in the Sword Dynasty, she was a proud child of the heavens. How could a stinky man from the Sword Dynasty compare to her? She didn't even bother to look at him. However, it was such a person who made her suffer. Although this person was young, his attacks were extremely domineering and ferocious. It made her feel like she was fighting against the fire origin. It was as if no matter what she did, he could shatter it with a single punch. It made her feel like she couldn't win at all. Bang! Once again, the attack that she had painstakingly condensed was easily defeated. The terrifying fist energy penetrated her attack and attacked her fragrant body. Hu Yan hurriedly used her nimble movement technique to dodge, darting around the arena. Many people were dumbfounded by the scene. That seductive Hu Yan actually wanted to flee from this young man from the Sword Dynasty? The chattering girls from Linglong Palace had long shut their mouths, and their faces were extremely gloomy. In the current situation, Hu Yan seemed to have a slight advantage in terms of speed. He did not even have the courage to fight the other party head-on. How could they not be nervous and worried? Is this all you've got? Ling Xiao suddenly stopped his attacks. He looked at Hu Yan mockingly and said, "If that's all you've got, then this battle should be over. You can't be from the Sword Dynasty. Who are you?" Hu Yan appeared to be in a somewhat sorry state. Her seductive aura from before was now replaced by a feeling of desolation. "Is it impossible?" "Haha, you say it's impossible just because you can't beat him?" "I am me, Sword Dynasty Ling Xiao." Ling Xiao mocked. Ling Xiao. This name sounds very familiar. In the past, the White Tiger continent had an absolute genius called Ling Xiao. "What's your relationship with him?" Hu Yan asked. "You already have the answer in your heart. Why ask again?" Ling Xiao laughed. "You are indeed him, the person that my Linglong Palace is chasing." Hu Yan's face turned cold and said, "All right, since that's the case, I'll capture you today and hand you over to the sect." "With just you? How are you going to capture me? Kneel down and capture me?" Ling Xiao mocked. Arrogant, Hu Yan was simply unable to restrain her anger. Her originally beautiful face had become ferocious at this moment. After Hu Yan came to the Sword Dynasty, she was pursued by various forces. She was like a beautiful fairy that had descended to the mortal world. Who dared to look down on her? Ignore her? However, this young man, this Ling Xiao, actually dared to tease her and not take her seriously? 9-tailed demon region. Hu Yan roared hysterically. Her body had already merged with the 9-tailed martial soul. The 9 tails suddenly stood up and released a ghostly aura. In an instant, the entire arena fell into a pink world. I never imagined that for the sake of dealing with an unknown kid from the Sword Dynasty, Hu Yan would actually utilize his trump card. Yeah, but once the Nine-Tailed Demon region is released, that kid is finished. What's his name again? I think it's Ling something. Anyway, he's just a pitiful cameo. Why remember him? Up until this point, the spectators naturally did not feel as strongly as Hu Yan, who bore the brunt of it. They still treated Ling Xiao as a passerby and a cameo. Once the Nine-Tailed Demon region is released, the entire arena will be filled with demonic aura. The opponent will definitely hallucinate and fall into an uncontrollable state. Sister Hu Yan will be able to win without shedding a drop of blood. The female disciples of Ling Long Palace regained their confidence once again. In front of their sister, Hu Yan's trump card, what was that kid called Ling Xiao? Using an illusion to deal with me? You've really got the wrong person. Ling Xiao shook his head gently. This Nine-Tailed Demon region might have a miraculous effect on other martial artists, but Ling Xiao's soul force, was incomparably powerful. The Tai Chi eye could even see through all nothingness. This thing was simply like juggling to him. Better end this boring battle as soon as possible. Ling Xiao did not waste any more time and finally displayed his movement technique, escaping to Jiang Guang's side. On the arena, because of the appearance of the pink fog, no one noticed what Ling Xiao did. Only hearing a muffled groan, a figure fell from the arena, landing on the ground. Clearly, she was already seriously injured. Hu Yan lost, and lost so miserably. The current Hu Yan did not even have the ability to get up by herself. Saying that she was miserable was not nonsense. *CK, that guy is really too terrifying. The Nine-Tailed Demon region actually had no effect on him at all? What kind of person is this? Devil, simply a devil. Such a delicate girl, he can also bear to do it? But he's really very strong. When this battle ended, the audience was in an uproar. Hu Yan lay on the ground, looking at Ling Xiao in horror. You'll definitely die a horrible death. Is that so? It's a pity that you'll never see it. Originally, Ling Xiao did not intend to be ruthless, but this Hu Yan did not know what was good for her, and insisted on provoking him. How could he hold back? With a casual flick, a sword light pierced through the air, directly piercing Hu Yan's throat. Hu Yan's vicious expression was completely frozen. She never dreamed that she would be killed like this, and that she would die so dejectedly. Ling Xiao wins, the black-clothed demon envoy said coldly. This tea party of gods and demons had no bottom line to begin with. Killing was a very normal thing. In the first round, apart from Bing Shan, who did not kill anyone, the other three had all killed their respective opponents. However, Ling Xiao had already beaten his opponent off the stage, yet he still went to deal the finishing blow. This made many people unable to continue watching. Therefore, in the audience, many of the participating martial artists were unhappy with him. Chapter 3261. Brat, Hu Yan is my woman. You dare kill her? Just as Ling Xiao walked down the stage, the strongest of the second stage, Hu Yuanzi, spoke. So what if I did? Ling Xiao looked at Hu Yuanzi and said indifferently, that brat is simply a madman. He even dares to provoke Hu Yuanzi? He killed Hu Yan and offended Hu Yuanzi. He's dead for sure. This is called karma. That's right. The trash of Sword Dynasty should all be eliminated. As a member of Sword Dynasty, Ling Xiao wasn't an old monster that had lived for hundreds or even tens of thousands of years. Therefore, his strength was a sin in itself. Only when he died would those people be happy. How could the cultivators of the Eight Supremes allow a brat from Sword Dynasty to ride on their heads? In their opinion, Ling Xiao had no chance of winning against Hu Yuanzi. Since the black-clothed demon envoy said that the four of them were the strongest, it couldn't be wrong. No one thought that Ling Xiao could win. So what if I killed him? He good. I, Hu Yuanzi, haven't seen such an arrogant guy in a long time. Just you wait, don't let me see you again. Hu Yuanzi sneered and sat down again. Idiot, aren't you one of those arrogant people? You can't even see each other's strength clearly, and you still dare to be so arrogant. Ling Xiao replied indifferently, but Hu Yuanzi, who had already sat down, stood up angrily. Good, very good. I will let you know the consequences of offending me. Hu Yuanzi, I'll wait. I'm afraid you don't have the ability. As they spoke, Ling Xiao had already returned to his seat. Hee, are you going to become enemies with the 8 Supremes? Jian Fulong laughed. It's only a matter of time. Ling Xiao said indifferently, the people who came to the tea party of gods and devils this time are just trash from various factions. If even they are afraid, then I don't need to say anything about unifying the 9 Supremes. To be honest, when you said this before, I only took it as a joke. Now it seems like you're serious. Jian Fulong said. Of course I'm serious. Not only do I want to unify the 9 Supremes, I want to unify the 4 regions and even the entire Black Tortoise continent. Ling Xiao said indifferently, knowing my past martial uncle, you should understand that I have never boasted. And all of this is going according to plan. It's my fortune to have met you. Jian Fulong sighed emotionally. Ling Xiao was the most domineering and pragmatic young man he had ever met. He had a grand wish, but he was able to restrain himself and advance step by step towards his goal. The most frightening thing was that everyone could talk big, but there were very few who would actually do it. Ling Xiao was the kind of person who dared to do what he said. This kind of person was actually the most terrifying. While the two of them were talking, the first round of matches in the second arena had already ended. The second round began. The first to go up was naturally Hu Yuanzi. His opponent was also a 5th division life-sizer, and yet, despite being in the same cultivation base, the difference in strength was enormous. Hu Yuanzi used only one move to burn his opponent, causing him to jump off the arena and concede. If he still didn't admit defeat, then only death would await him. Considering how vicious Hu Yuanzi was, he didn't want to die. When it was Jian Fulong's turn, he used only one sword move to defeat his opponent. Not only was he stronger than he had been in the same cultivation base, but he also had the body of a blood devil. Combined with his years of experience, it was almost impossible to defeat him. After Jian Fulong, Ling Xiao took the stage. Perhaps it was because he had defeated Hu Yan, but Ling Xiao's notoriety had spread far and wide. Many people had come to watch him fight. They just wanted to see how he would be killed. Ling Xiao's opponent wasn't weak, and was even stronger than Hu Yan. Hu Yan was terrifying because of her charm arts and the 9-tailed demon domain. As for this new opponent, it was purely because of his terrifying fighting prowess. Therefore, many people were looking forward to Ling Xiao being defeated here. Xiong Ben of Wanguo. That man was like a giant beast standing opposite Ling Xiao. He was 4 meters tall. The muscles on his body were like lumps of iron. This Ling Xiao's luck is really bad. He just defeated Hu Yan, and now he meets Xiong Ben. He is second only to Xiang Mafei among the martial artists from Wanguo. I guess even God can't stand it anymore and wants to bury this Ling Xiao with Hu Yan. The people below the stage were naturally happy to mock and make sarcastic remarks. However, Xiong Ben on the stage was not idle. Get off the stage and I won't kill you. Xiong Ben's eyes flashed with a hint of ruthlessness. You're planning to kill me after I get off the stage, right? Ling Xiao looked at Xiong Ben and sneered. Ha, you saw through it, but so what? Your thin arms and legs can't withstand a beating at all. Xiong Ben laughed wildly and then suddenly jumped up. When his 4-meter-tall body jumped up, even the stage shook 3 times. Then he waved a huge iron hammer in the air and smashed it at Ling Xiao. The iron hammer was probably tens of thousands of pounds, not to mention smashing. Even if it pressed down on people, it could probably crush people into meat paste. However, Ling Xiao stood there motionless, as if he did not see Xiong Ben's attack at all. It was as if he was scared silly. Boom! The terrible heavy blow finally fell. However, what surprised countless people was that Ling Xiao was actually able to stop this terrifying hammer with just one hand. His waist did not even bend in the slightest. How was this possible? What Xiong Ben relied on the most was his own strength. When fighting with others, he basically won with strength. Under the same cultivation, there was basically no martial artist who could resist his terrifying attack. However, Ling Xiao, the Sword Dynasty youth that they looked down on, used one hand to announce the failure of Xiong Ben's strength. I don't believe it. Giant Bear Beast Soul Possession. With a roar, Xiong Ben finally called out his beast soul, and his body instantly changed. After the transformation, his strength increased by at least 10 times. Ling Xiao's body was finally pressed down, and the stage under his feet seemed to have begun to crack. Ha ha ha, that kid is really finished. Although being able to force Xiong Ben to use beast soul possession is already very strong, it's useless. Excited shouts came from the crowd. Go to hell, demon! Useless Sword Dynasty trash. However, Ling Xiao, who was on the stage, said something that sounded like a bluff, even though he was obviously at a disadvantage. With this kind of strength, you dare to show off in front of me? Vajra Ape Beast Soul Transformation. At that moment, Ling Xiao transformed into the Vajra Ape. Not only did his defense increase greatly, but his strength also skyrocketed. His body, which was originally bent, straightened once again. Not only that, but he also directly threw out the huge monster Xiong Ben. That guy, does he have beast soul transformation? Chapter 3262. Is this the end of your power? Facing Xiong Ben, Ling Xiao, who had transformed into King Kong Ape, showed a sneer. In the face of Xiong Ben's terrifying power, there were only a few people in the entire arena who could still maintain such a smile. Humph, you must have some magic weapon on you, right? But it doesn't matter. I can't suppress you in strength, but I can crush you in martial arts. Xiong Ben coldly snorted. He didn't feel that he had lost in strength, but he thought that Ling Xiao had some magic weapon on him which offset his power. Otherwise, even if King Kong Ape transformed, it would be impossible to stop him. Since his power was offset, then he would use martial arts to defeat his opponent. Martial arts? Hee, I've already said that's it for you. I'll let you be defeated by the power you're most proud of. Ling Xiao suddenly sneered, and a terrifying force gushed out of his arms, directly sending Xiong Ben flying. Then he soared into the air. A Qianjun rod condensed from true essence appeared in his hand, and he smashed it down heavily. Kneel down for me. Terrifying power was unleashed on the Qianjun rod. Ling Xiao was like a golden monkey god of war. He raised the Qianjun rod and smashed it down fiercely. Xiong Ben desperately resisted. How could he kneel down? He was a martial artist of Myriad Kingdom. He absolutely could not kneel down. Boom! A terrifying force smashed down. Xiong Ben suddenly felt that his arms were about to break, and his legs instantly bent. Crack! Unable to withstand that terrifying power, his kneecaps finally shattered, and his huge body fell down with a loud bang. He knelt in front of Ling Xiao. This scene shocked the audience. My goodness, how can this kid's power be so terrifying? Is it the power of magic weapon? It shouldn't be. Magic weapon can offset power and increase power? What level is this magic weapon? He's just a little Sword King dynasty martial artist. It's impossible for him to have it. Everyone talked about it, and they had a new understanding of Ling Xiao. Not afraid of charm, not afraid of power. What weakness does this guy have? The moment Xiong Ben knelt down, Xiang Mafei's face suddenly became gloomy. Xiong Ben actually lost to this kid in terms of strength? He frowned and sneered. Ling Xiao, is it? I'll remember your name. I hope we don't meet each other. Otherwise, if you dare to humiliate the martial artists of my Wangua, I'll let you die. Impossible. How could I lose to this trash? Xiong Pai shouted hysterically, venting the unwillingness and anger in his heart. However, what Ling Xiao gave him was a kick. That stupid body flew out and smashed into the ground. Ling Xiao wins, the black-clothed demon envoy announced in a cold voice. Looks like that guy defeating Huyan really wasn't an accident. That's right. His strength is even more terrifying than Xiongben's. This kid is definitely a troublesome fellow, but that's probably the strongest he can get. After all, he's only in the 3rd division of life seizing. Even if he went all out, he would only be able to defeat Xiongben. Ling Xiao's fight with Xiongben made him the center of attention, and many people began to view him as someone who was just below the 4 most powerful experts. Now, no one dared to underestimate this young man from the Sword Dynasty. Ling Xiao transformed back into his true form and walked off of the arena, looking as relaxed as ever, not leaving a single speck of dust behind him. Although he wasn't exactly imposing, many people felt like they were suffocating from the pressure. That was especially true of the martial artists in Arena Number 2. Many of them had never fought Ling Xiao before, and were even more afraid of him than before. The people from the dazzling palace had been hoping that Xiongben would avenge Huyan, but now none of them dared to say a word. Ling Xiao's performance had been domineering, and he had defeated his opponents in the areas they were most adept at. He was far too mysterious and far too terrifying. What's there to be afraid of? He's not afraid of the 9-tailed demon domain, which means his soul power is strong enough. He's not afraid of power, which means he's strong enough. Unfortunately, a martial artist's energy is limited. He's going all out in terms of soul power and power, but he's only slightly stronger than Huyan and Xiongpai. He's definitely a mess in other areas. What an idiot. Doesn't he know that cultivation requires specialization? Hu Yuanzi said, loudly, just as the people in Arena Number 2 were in a state of panic. His words weren't wrong to most people, but to Ling Xiao it was meaningless. Hu Yuanzi thought that he had grasped the truth, but he was just a frog at the bottom of a well who had never seen a true genius. Along the way, he had only focused on the fire elemental gathering as his main cultivation direction. He had already defeated many opponents, so he believed in his judgment. He said that I'm not good in other areas. What do you think, martial uncle? After sitting down, Ling Xiao looked at Jian Fulong and smiled. Just a frog at the bottom of a well. Jian Fulong deliberately said loudly, Good, very good. The 2 of you, don't think that you'll have an easy time today. According to the rules, martial artists in the same arena would meet sooner or later. Therefore, Hu Yuanzi knew that he would fight with Ling Xiao and Jian Fulong. He wanted to teach these 2 how to behave. We'll wait, Jian Fulong sneered. Then the 2 of them stopped looking at Hu Yuanzi and began to pay attention to the situation in the 4 arenas. A fight between experts always made people feel that it was very interesting. The 4 strongest experts, selected by the black-robed demon envoy, had basically defeated their opponents within 3 moves. Not a single martial artist had been able to escape this nightmare. The people believed in the black-robed demon envoy's judgment more and more. Although Ling Xiao and Jian Fulong's performance was outstanding, they still felt that the 2 of them were far inferior to the 4 strongest experts. Of course, the dark horses weren't only Ling Xiao and Jian Fulong. There were 2 other people who weren't favored at the beginning who also displayed terrifying strength. One of them was Morong Qi. Ling Xiao had seen this woman's battle and felt that she was a little small. Her strength was probably much more powerful than he had imagined. The other one was called Yu Fei from Soul Hall. This guy specialized in soul secret techniques. His enemies were often defeated before they knew what had happened. Perhaps because Ling Xiao defeated Huyan, Yu Fei seemed to have paid too much attention to him. They were clearly not in the same arena, but this Yu Fei threatened to let Ling Xiao have a taste of how terrifying soul secret techniques were after smoothly defeating his opponent. Regarding this, Ling Xiao laughed it off. This kind of person thought that he had grasped the trick of soul secret techniques, but he didn't know how terrifying Ling Xiao was. Ling Xiao didn't pay attention to him at all. Instead, his gaze landed on Dugu Kanjing. Speaking of which, The peak of the 4 strongest experts was probably this old monster. His 2 opponents were directly sucked dry of their blood essence and died. Facing him, they didn't have the strength to fight back. Therefore, when it came to the 3rd round, his opponent directly refused to go on stage and simply admitted defeat. Chapter 3263. Xiang Mo Fei's performance in the 3rd round was still domineering. His opponent was intimidated by his aura and knelt down to surrender before he even made a move. This guy looked at Ling Xiao as if he was provoking him, directly raising his middle finger. In the face of Xiang Mo Fei's provocation, Ling Xiao only gave him 3 words: "You're courting death." Although his words sounded simple, they gave many people a fright. In the entire venue, except for the mysterious god and devil envoys and Dugu Kanjing, who would dare to say such words to Xiang Mo Fei? Even Hui Yuanzi and Bing Shan were somewhat afraid of Xiang Mo Fei. This kid, he thinks he's great just because he's a dark horse? Ling Xiao's arrogance once again aroused the dissatisfaction of many people. It seemed that they were more willing to see Xiang Mo Fei act cool than Ling Xiao's arrogance. To put it bluntly, there was only one reason, and that was that they thought Ling Xiao wasn't as strong as Xiang Mo Fei. Ling Xiao didn't care about this. Strength was something that could only be known after a competition. It wasn't like he was really inferior to Xiang Mo Fei just because others said so. Bing Shan was still as cold as ever. In the 3rd round, he simply turned the entire stage into a huge ice block and wrapped himself inside. If the opponent couldn't break the ice, they couldn't go on stage and could only admit defeat. At the referee's table, the black-clothed and white-clothed envoys were also discussing the battle situation. It seemed that the 2 of them weren't particularly interested in this tea party of the gods and devils. "They're all trash, boring battles," the black-clothed envoys said coldly. "Hey, why bother? This tea party of the gods and demons is just a competition between trash. What we need to do is to give the 3 god-fiend tokens to the strongest trash." The white-clothed envoys laughed. "That won't do. I've already agreed with Dragon Mother of Wangua to give these 3 tokens to Xiang Mo Fei." The black-clothed envoy said, "I know. With Xiang Mo Fei's strength, winning the top 3 shouldn't be a problem. But he might not be a match for Dugu Kanjing. He's an old monster." The white-clothed envoy said again, "If I knew this would happen, I would have just given it to Dragon Mother." The black-clothed demon envoy said unhappily, "Don't ever do that. Have you forgotten how our god and devil envoys died? They didn't follow Master's orders, and the end result was death." The white-robed messenger of God suddenly appeared very frightened. "That Master is an omniscient and omnipotent existence. It's best if we don't act recklessly." "You're right. But it shouldn't be a problem to give Xiang Ma Fei some benefits in private, right?" The black-clothed demon envoy said again. "As long as it doesn't affect the rules of the tea party of gods and devils, it's fine." The white-robed divine envoy nodded. While they were talking, a few more rounds of the competition had passed. The 4 strongest cultivators were still undefeated. There were still 4 dark horses that remained undefeated: Ling Xiao, Jian Fulong Morongqi, and Yu Fei. At this moment, the crowd suddenly cheered. This was because the battle between the dark horse and the strongest had finally begun. The 2 sides fighting were Huanzi and Jian Fulong. Everyone was cheering for Hui Yuanzi. This domineering and handsome young man was naturally more popular than that old man Jian Fulong. Other than the few voices from the Sword Dynasty that were supporting Jian Fulong, almost everyone present was Huanzi's fan. "I'll go and defeat him. Is there a problem?" Jian Fulong turned around and glanced at Ling Xiao. "Of course there's no problem. Among the 4 strongest cultivators, only Dugu Kanjing and Xiang Ma Fei are a threat to me. This Huanzi is nothing." Ling Xiao smiled. "All right." Jian Fulong stepped onto the stage, but what he got in return was a wave of curses. Because his voice was too loud when he spoke to Ling Xiao, everyone present heard it. They were simply too arrogant. They actually didn't put Huanzi in their eyes. Wasn't this dark horse too arrogant? Go to hell, old man. Get lost. Useless trash from the Sword Dynasty. Waves of curses came from the cultivators of the 8 supreme forces. However, Jian Fulong didn't say anything. The instant the referee shouted the start of the battle, he attacked. He was so fast that he didn't hesitate. When the battle started, the curses stopped. This was because everyone saw the strange battle situation on the battlefield. Jian Fulong was actually suppressing Huanzi. The two of them fought for a total of 100 rounds. Huanzi could only retaliate and was finally blasted off the stage by Jian Fulong. Jian Fulong wins. The black-robed demon envoy was stunned for a long time before he finally announced the result. He was too shocked. Jian Fulong, this dark horse, actually broke his judgment. You've underestimated Jian Fulong. He's the demon lord of the devil dragon, Sword Court, from hundreds of years ago. The white-robed demon envoy smiled. I've indeed underestimated him. However, the young man beside him is definitely not a match for Huanzi. The black-robed demon envoy said coldly. He believed that he didn't make a mistake this time. At this moment, Huanzi, who was lying on the ground, suddenly burst into flames as he roared in pain. Oh, this kid actually profited from a disaster and made a breakthrough in his cultivation technique. The black-robed demon envoy smiled with interest. Originally, his Inferno Divine art should only be at the Great Perfection stage, but now it has entered the Transformation stage. This way, his flames will become even more terrifying. His strength will also become stronger. If he fights with Jian Fulong again in this state, he will definitely win. That kid called Ling Xiao is unlucky. Huanzi finally returned to normal as he looked coldly at Jian Fulong and Ling Xiao. If I don't take revenge, I'm not a gentleman. Ling Xiao, you should apologize on behalf of your companion. He roared. His mentality, which was on the verge of collapse, became incomparably confident again. The silent audience cheered once again. Huanzi's failure was an accident. However, the breakthrough in his cultivation technique was also an accident. Perhaps this was a blessing in disguise. The next one to face Huanzi should be Ling Xiao. He's finished. This was the view that almost everyone agreed with. Even the Sword King dynasty martial artists who supported Ling Xiao felt that Ling Xiao was in trouble. Jian Fulong also furrowed his brows and said, "The transformation stage and the Great Perfection stage are two completely different concepts. You have to be careful. Martial uncle, don't you believe me?" Ling Xiao smiled and asked, "It's not that I don't believe you. I just want to remind you to be careful. Your opponent is obviously much stronger than before. Don't underestimate him," Jian Fulong said with a serious face. "Don't worry, martial uncle. I won't underestimate him." Ling Xiao smiled and went on to defeat his opponent. Soon the next round began. Huanzi versus Ling Xiao. The strengthened version of Huanzi against another dark horse in the second arena immediately attracted the attention of the audience. As the saying goes, an army filled with indignation is bound to win. Many people believed that Huanzi would win after his defeat against Jian Fulong. Chapter 3264. The dark horse had encountered the strengthened version of Huanzi. Even the black-clothed and white-clothed emissaries were paying close attention to this battle. "Ling Xiao, you're too pitiful. If you had met me before, you might have won. However, after evolving my cultivation method, I'm 10 times stronger than before. If you want to blame someone, blame that martial uncle of yours. He should have killed me, not defeated me." Huanzi looked at Ling Xiao. The flames on his body burned and rose. His voice had returned to its former domineering and cold tone. Many people agreed with his words. That Ling Xiao is really unlucky. That's right. If his uncle master had killed Huanzi, he wouldn't be in such trouble. It's a pity that he didn't. Huanzi, kill that Ling Xiao. Kill that devil. The disciples of Linglong Palace also placed their hopes on Hui Yuanzi. None of them were a match for Ling Xiao, so they could not avenge Hu Yan. Now, they could only place their hopes on Hui Yuanzi. Of course, these people only dared to hide behind Ling Xiao's back and boast. If they were really allowed to fight Ling Xiao, all of them would probably be scared witless. However, with Hui Yuanzi, no, the strengthened version of Hui Yuanzi standing there, blocking Ling Xiao's killing intent for them, they still had the guts to clamor. In an instant, Ling Xiao became the target of public criticism. If there was a ranking of the person that everyone wanted to eliminate the most, it would probably be him. Hee, Ling Xiao, if you kneel down and apologize to me now and become my follower, I won't listen to those people and let you live. Hui Yuanzi smiled and looked at Ling Xiao proudly. It was as if he was invincible with so many people supporting him. Is that all you want to say? Ling Xiao put his hands behind his back and looked at Hui Yuanzi mockingly. A piece of trash who can't even defeat my uncle master dares to be so arrogant in front of me? Do you believe that I can beat you up without using my hands and without leaving the ground? Arrogant, domineering. How arrogant! Ling Xiao was still as arrogant as ever. Hui Yuanzi's smug expression instantly darkened. You're courting death. Boom! 3 crimson flames gathered above Hui Yuanzi's head like 3 suns. Then, one of the balls of flames that contained unparalleled heat and power blasted toward Ling Xiao, who dared to look down on his strengthened version of the Seed of Origin. The fireball had a diameter of about 1 meter. Whether it was its speed or power, everyone could feel how powerful and tyrannical it was. That was clearly what Hui Yuanzi was thinking right now. That was clearly his fiercest anger. Ling Xiao stared coldly at the incoming fireball, which could easily kill an ordinary 4th Division life-sizer. This was enough to show how terrifying its power was. And yet he was Ling Xiao despite the fact that his cultivation base was only in the 3rd Division of life-seizing. However, when it came to playing with fire, Hui Yuanzi could only kneel down and wipe his shoes. Rumble! The terrifying fireball slammed into Ling Xiao, and a huge explosion ensued. All the onlookers could see was raging flames, and Ling Xiao's figure was nowhere to be seen. The crowd erupted into cheers. Perhaps they were convinced that Ling Xiao had already been destroyed by the fireball. However, a moment later, they saw a figure appear behind Hui Yuanzi. What a terrifying movement technique! Watch out, Hui Yuanzi! Most shocking of all was that Ling Xiao had actually dodged Hui Yuanzi's attack. After all, no one had ever been able to do so in any of their previous battles. Not even Jian Fulong had been able to. All Jian Fulong had done was use more power to repel the attack. Back then, the attack hadn't been this powerful. But Ling Xiao had dodged it, and he had done it so casually. If Ling Xiao had struck Hui Yuanzi in the back, he would have been seriously injured, if not killed. However, Hui Yuanzi's expression was one of ruthlessness and cunning. A cold smile appeared on his face. Rumble! Amidst the exploding flames, the fireball seemed to have locked onto Ling Xiao's position. It quickly bypassed Hui Yuanzi and charged toward Ling Xiao, who was behind him. However, Ling Xiao had disappeared once again. The evading sword gleam steps was executed under his feet, and it was like a strange sword gleam that couldn't be captured. Didn't you say that you wouldn't leave this place? Hui Yuanzi couldn't help but roar with an ugly expression after seeing that his attack had failed. That's right, a guy who doesn't keep his word. Someone from the crowd shouted, Are you an idiot? Do you believe everything I say? Would you believe me if I said that I'm your grandfather? Ling Xiao curled his lips and mocked disdainfully. Laughter erupted from the crowd. Naturally, it came from the Sword Dynasty's martial artists. You. What about me? All right, I won't bully you with my movement technique anymore. You can't catch up to me anyway. I don't want others to say that I had an unfair advantage. Come on, I won't leave this place this time. Whoever lies is a dog. Ling Xiao hooked his finger at Hui Yuanzi as if he was calling a dog. Hui Yuanzi was about to explode from anger. He had never seen an opponent like Ling Xiao, who was so infuriating. "Don't just stand there. I'm going to attack." Ling Xiao suddenly shouted coldly, and 9 demon dragon sun swords appeared around his body. The 9 demon dragon sun swords that had been tempered thousands of times to become high-quality emperor artifacts were finally summoned. He couldn't remember how long it had been since he last used the demon dragon sun swords. Due to their poor quality, they couldn't be used. However, the 9 demon dragon sun swords that Ling Xiao had modified with a large amount of precious materials now had the same quality as the demon dragon sun swords. It was time to take them out and play with them. Kill! Ling Xiao's feet didn't leave the ground, and his hands were still behind his back. The 9 demon dragon sun swords flew toward Hu Yuanzi under the control of his soul power. This time he really didn't leave the ground and didn't use his hands. At that moment, everyone was shocked. In all of Ling Xiao's previous battles, he had used the most basic of fists to send his opponents flying. Even when he transformed into the King Kong ape beast soul, he had used his fists to defeat Xiong Ben. They didn't understand Ling Xiao's true fighting style at all. They only knew that he could transform into a beast soul. At this moment, when they saw Ling Xiao controlling the 9 swords to attack, they realized that this guy actually knew the rumored imperial sword technique. The imperial sword technique was also divided into different levels. Using objects to control the sword, such as the skyworm silk, to grab the sword's tail and control it. Using qi to control the sword was much more advanced. Using inner strength to control the sword to attack was more flexible. The range was longer, and the power was greater. Using the soul to control the sword meant that using the soul power to control the sword, one's thoughts would be completely synchronized with the sword, allowing for the most flexible battle. The best was the coexistence of qi and soul. Not only was it more flexible, but it was also more powerful. Most people who had mastered the imperial sword technique had only reached the 2nd stage. This was because the 3rd stage required one's soul power to be incomparably powerful. Chapter 32:65. There were very few people in the world who could use the imperial sword technique to combine soul power and inner strength. Those from the Soul Clan had enough soul power, but they didn't have inner strength, so they couldn't do it. However, Ling Xiao could do it. As his opponent, Hu Yuanzi didn't dare to show any arrogance. He knew that Ling Xiao wasn't as easy to deal with as he thought. Ling Xiao's 9 demon dragon swords each contained 9 terrifying sword intents. No matter which one it was, they were all extremely terrifying. One was filled with a destructive aura, which was the destructive sword intent. One was filled with a murderous aura, which was the murderous sword intent. One was filled with a domineering aura, which was the domineering sword intent. One was filled with an undying aura, which was the undying sword intent. One was filled with a blazing aura, which was the fire sword intent. One was filled with the fury of thunder, which was the lightning sword intent. One was filled with the aura of death, which was the death sword intent. One was filled with the aura of the earth, which was the earth sword intent. The last was filled with the might of the heavens, which was the firmament sword intent. Hu Yuanzi's face turned ugly in the face of these 9 terrifying sword intents. However, he wasn't afraid because of this. This was because he was confident that his flames were equally powerful. There were 3 balls of flames above his head, which also contained 3 different intents. The most blazing battle intent, the coldest battle intent, the most tenacious battle intent. The 3 balls of flames represented attack and defense respectively. Hu Yuanzi was quite capable. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been listed as one of the 4 strongest people by the black-robed demon envoy. Although he lost to Jian Fulong, he had an epiphany and leveled up his cultivation technique, which made him even stronger than before. This was enough to show that his comprehension was extremely good. Facing Ling Xiao's attack, the 3 balls of flames above Hu Yuanzi's head blasted out at the same time. They formed a perfect defense around his body, blocking the attacks of Ling Xiao's 9 demon dragon swords. A loud boom sounded. The 9 demon dragon sword's attacks were ineffective and retreated. The Hu Yuanzi seemed to have the upper hand in this clash. Striking while the iron was hot, Hu Yuanzi only left the ball of yellow flames. Then he released 2 balls of scarlet red and blue flames, attacking Ling Xiao at the same time. However, Ling Xiao still had a faint smile on his face. His body quickly entered the universal light tiger beast soul transformation state. In this beast soul transformation state, Ling Xiao's speed increased the most. It wasn't just his speed, but also his attack speed. The 9 demon dragon's sun swords once again condensed their attacks, with 5 of them blocking the red and blue balls of flames. These 2 balls of flames were very strange. One was incomparably hot, while the other was incomparably cold. Furthermore, he had condensed nearly 70% of Hua Yuanzi's battle prowess, so it wasn't that easy to block. Therefore, Ling Xiao did not dare to underestimate his opponent. The remaining 4 demon dragon swords continued to attack Hu Yuanzi. However, it was blocked by the yellow flames. The flames were like a yellow barrier, providing Hu Yuanzi with the perfect defense. However, at that moment, Hu Yuanzi's expression was extremely ugly. Truth be told, he was currently at a disadvantage. He could only defend passively and couldn't even unleash an attack. His attacks would be intercepted midway, making it impossible for him to harm Ling Xiao. Anyone with normal eyesight would be able to see what was happening. Ling Xiao stood there motionless, attacking and defending within a 5-meter radius of Hu Yuanzi. How could this Ling Xiao be so strong? Logically speaking, this shouldn't be happening. The black-robed devil emissary frowned as he began to question his own judgment. He must have some sort of hidden power. Perhaps his true battle prowess is even more terrifying than this. The white-robed divine emissary frowned. That's impossible. He's only in the 3rd stratum of the life-seizing level. Yet he's still able to suppress Hua Yuanzi. Hua Yuanzi might be the weakest of the 4. But I don't believe you when you say that Ling Xiao is hiding his true strength. The black-robed devil emissary didn't dare to believe it, nor did he want to believe it. After all, if that was the case, then Ling Xiao's potential was simply too terrifying. That guy's gotten even stronger. Dugu Kanjing's brow furrowed. Apparently, Ling Xiao had only been gone for a few days, and yet he had already grown stronger. If he didn't get rid of Yang Qi soon, he would become a huge problem in the future. Interesting. No wonder Mammoth Mountain got killed in the Sword Dynasty. So, the Sword Dynasty has geniuses like him. Mammoth Mountain chuckled, as if he didn't care at all. Hua Yuanzi is in trouble, Iceberg Mountain said coolly. He's in trouble. Of course. Hua Yuanzi had no idea what these people were thinking. However, he was in a bit of a dilemma. It didn't matter how terrifying his attacks were. They would be blocked by the 5 swords. Under the attacks of the 4 Mo Longzi swords, his own defense was in imminent danger. Hu Yuanzi finally understood why Ling Xiao was so arrogant. Yang Qi's strength was truly terrifying. Is that all you've got? Yang Qi said, It seems I overestimated you. Now, I'll show you what I'm really capable of. To put it bluntly, the Devil Dragon Sun swords were just ordinary attacks. Although Ling Xiao's ordinary attacks could reach the level of greater mastery of a medium general level martial technique. But that was the limit after all. However, there were more possibilities for martial technique attacks. Yang Qi didn't even need to perform any hand seals. A Ghost King appeared in front of Ling Xiao. That was the terrifying thing about the 5 Ghost Secret technique. It could attack at any time. The Ghost King leaped into the air, disregarding the distance of tens of meters. He descended from the sky and grabbed at Hu Yuanzi with his terrifying ghost claws. Humph. No matter how strong your attacks are, my defense is not to be trifled with. Hu Yuanzi snorted. Although he was surprised by Ling Xiao's attack, he gritted his teeth. He didn't believe that Ling Xiao could break through his defense. Defense? I'm just kidding. Do you really think your defense is that strong? Ling Shao sneered. The Ghost King's claws landed. Crack! A crack finally appeared on Hu Yuanzi's defense. That crack was enough to kill him. The 4 Devil Dragon Sun swords, which had been attacking nonstop, drilled into the crack and widened it even more. The Ghost King waved its claws in anger. Hu Yuanzi, who had lost his defense, was blasted out of the arena. So what if you've leveled up your martial technique? In my eyes, you're just an insignificant passerby. Ling Shao looked coldly at Hu Yuanzi, who was sent flying out of the arena, and walked down the arena. Ling Shao wins. Wow. As soon as the result was announced, the entire arena was in an uproar. Almost everyone's gaze was on the arrogant Ling Shao. Their faces were filled with disbelief. Their faces were filled with fear. Their faces were filled with shock. On the judges' seats, the black-robed demon envoy was silent for a long time after the result was announced. First, Jian Fulong defeated Hu Yuanzi, which made his judgment wrong. After all, Jian Fulong was an old monster who had lived for hundreds of years. Chapter 3266. I'm afraid this kid will be this year's surprise. The divine envoy in white laughed. You're still laughing? If he gets the 3 fiend god tokens, won't I go back on my word? The divine envoy in black said coldly, Are you stupid? If he gets the 3 fiend god tokens, won't he become the target of public criticism? When the time comes, let the people of Myriad Land snatch them back. You just need to help secretly. As long as you don't attack directly, it won't be considered breaking the rules. The divine envoy in white shook his head. That's right. The divine envoy in black's gloomy expression suddenly became cheerful. He laughed and said, Although this kid is powerful, he might not be able to get first place. After all, whether it's Dugu Kanjing, Xiang Mafei, or Bing Shan, they're all much stronger than Hu Yuanzi. But he hasn't exposed his true martial soul yet. He's hidden it well. The divine envoy in white laughed. That universal tiger and Vajra ape aren't his martial souls? I thought he had a rare dual martial soul. The divine envoy in black was obviously not as perceptive as the divine envoy in white, so he was a little surprised. Dual martial souls? I guess his martial soul is probably much more powerful than a dual martial soul. It's very likely that he has inherited some kind of beast god soul. Only beast god soul can be compatible with other beast gods. The divine envoy in white speculated. Beast god soul? Don't joke around. If he really has a beast god soul, I'd like to see it. But how can such a thing appear in a desolate place like the Western region? The divine envoy in black obviously didn't believe it. Let's see. If it's true, we have to report it to Master. The divine envoy in white pondered for a moment. While the two of them were discussing Ling Shao, the people below the stage were also discussing. At this moment, Ling Shao was no longer just a dark horse. He had become one of the 4 strongest cultivators. Because he defeated the strengthened version of Hu Yuanzi, he should be stronger than Jian Fulong in terms of strength. In the following battles, the martial artists who faced Ling Shao chose to admit defeat because they didn't want to exhaust their strength in a battle that they had no chance of winning. After all, the top 3 contestants were to be born in each arena, not just one. In this way, all the battles in the second arena came to an end. The top 3 rankings were decided. First place, Ling Shao. Ranked 2, Sword Subduing Dragon. Rank 3, Hu Yuanzi might have been injured by Ling Shao, but a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. No one else could beat him. Naturally, Ling Shao, who had defeated the strengthened Hu Yuanzi, became the undisputed number 1 and attracted the attention of countless people. No one dared to look down on him or laugh at him anymore. One after another, the battles in the other 3 arenas also ended. There were 9 people in total. Including the 3 people in the second arena, there were 12 people in total. These people had all received the spirit stones promised by the black-clothed demon envoy. Next, they would advance to the finals. He would become the final contender for the 3 God Fiend tokens. The 3 people in the first arena were: first place, Dugu Kanjing second place, Foxfire third place. Lay Dalong. What people couldn't help but notice was that the second and third place both chose to admit defeat when fighting against Dugu Kanjing. This was enough to show how terrifying Dugu Kanjing was. Arena 3 rankings. First place, Xiang Mafei. Second place, Murong Qi. Third place, Yu Fei. Yu Fei and Murong Qi were dark horses like Ling Xiao. Some people even said that Ling Xiao was only lucky to have gone to the weakest arena, the second arena. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to get first place. Murong Qi's ice martial soul was exceptionally terrifying. Yu Fei's soul technique was also strange, but it was still slightly inferior to Murong Qi's. He was only ranked third. The first place in the fourth arena was naturally Bingshan. There was no suspense about this. The second and third place came from the other 8 factions. They were already quite old. In fact, the most surprising faction in today's Tea Party was the Sword Dynasty. The Sword Dynasty that wasn't favored actually had 4 people in the top 12. Dugu Kanjing, Ling Xiao, Jian Fulong, and Murong Qi. Although it was already late, everyone only rested for an hour before the finals officially began. The 2 God Fiend envoys didn't seem to be willing to stay in the Western region for a while longer. The 4 arenas merged into one and became an even bigger arena for the finals. The 12 finalists sat upright and still, preparing for the fight for the God Fiend token. As for those who were eliminated, they weren't in a hurry to leave. There were many accidents in this tea party. They all wanted to see who would be able to obtain the 3 tokens in the end. Let's begin. First match, Dugu Kanjing versus Li Qingzong. Dugu Kanjing, this old man wants to see how capable the emperor of the Sword Dynasty is. Just these last words. Dugu Kanjing looked at Li Qingzong with contempt. He directly attacked, and a terrifying power swept out. Li Qingzong felt as if the blood in his body was being sucked out. He was so frightened that his face changed, and he actually jumped off the arena. He was an expert, after all. If he really wanted to admit defeat, Dugu Kanjing couldn't do anything about it. He wasn't like the trash he encountered before. Even if they wanted to admit defeat, they couldn't and were quickly killed by him. Second match, Ling Xiao versus Yu Fei. The first person to enter the arena was the champion of the 4 arenas. In front of me, your strength will become meaningless. Yu Fei looked coldly at Ling Xiao. Others were afraid of Ling Xiao, but he wasn't. After all, his fighting style was different from others. Is that so? Then please make your move. Ling Xiao looked at Yu Fei and said indifferently. He knew how powerful his opponent was. Soul mystic arts were very difficult to defend against. Sometimes, even if your cultivation was higher, you would still be defeated by your opponent. Then I won't be polite. Yu Fei snorted coldly. Suddenly, the entire arena turned black. It was gloomy as if it was a ghost realm. Everyone quietly looked at the 2 people in the arena. They didn't know what would happen next. Ling Xiao, why aren't you admitting defeat? Suddenly, Yu Fei roared. This voice came from the ghost realm. To many people, it sounded like the voice of a ghost. It was very terrifying. Many cultivators directly knelt on the ground and shouted that they admitted defeat. They were affected by Yu Fei's soul mystic art. These people were only affected by it. Then what would happen to Ling Xiao, who bore the brunt of it? Everyone looked at Ling Xiao impatiently. How is this possible? The current Ling Xiao was still standing there calmly with a smile on his face. He had no intention of admitting defeat at all. When Yu Fei saw this scene, his brows furrowed slightly. Then he released an even more terrifying soul force. Ling Xiao, why aren't you kneeling down and admitting defeat? Many people knew about Yu Fei's soul mystic art.